Good evening. I call to order the regular meeting of the City Council of Lakewood, Colorado on August 26th at 7:55 p.m. in council chambers. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Paul.
Here.
Roybal.
Here.
Gutwein. Here. Skilling. LeBure. Here. Abel.
Here.
Vincent. Here. Vita. Here. Johnson. Here. Franks.
Here.
Harrison. Here. You have a quorum.
Great. Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for coming out this evening. We are starting a little bit late. For those of you who were here earlier, we had a special study session meeting that started at 5 and we ended a little bit later, so we'll get right into this agenda. I ask if you have a cell phone to please put that on silent, and I ask all in attendance to observe the decorum of the chambers. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Clerk, please read item 4.
Item 4, Resolution 2019-26, appointing a member to the Lakewood Advisory Commission.
Chairman Abel?
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2019-26.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to appoint a member to the Lakewood Advisory Commission. Do you want to further extrapolate?
Oh, my script says that's all I'm supposed to say. You have the rest of it.
All right. Well, 1 second here. We're still getting caught up. Mr. Bunch, are you here with us? All right. Stand up, sir. We want to give you a round of applause. We're going to do it before we vote.
A Ward 1 resident, I might add.
Ward 1. All right. Well, thank you for your willingness to serve. We still have to vote. We have a motion and a second, but I'm pretty sure this should go well.
Are you asking us to vote?
Please. All right, there we go. Ta-da, 11-0. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. Ms. Franks, did you want to speak? Your light's on.
I just wanted to comment that I was actually the chair of that committee, but still, and I really did just want to thank, we had some really good folks that came out. So I did want to just acknowledge everyone who came out, and we do have a round of other interviews that'll be going in September.
All right. Will the clerk please read item 5?
Item 5, Resolution 2019-27, appointing Greg Sekira to the Metro Wastewater Reclamation District Board of Directors.
Okay, I have a motion.
Mayor, I move for the adoption of Resolution 2019-27.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please cast your votes. That passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Mr. Sekira, you are here with us this evening. If you want to stand, and thank you very much for your service and distinguished career in this field. Councilor Franks? Your light's on? No? Okay. Okay, we are moving right along to public comment. This is the point in the meeting where the public is invited to address the City Council on items that did not appear on the agenda. All comments should be directed at the City Council. I ask that all in attendance observe the decorum of council chambers and refrain from applause or audible support or discord with the speaker. There's a 3-minute time limit. There's actually a clock on this now, but it'll go green, yellow at 2.5, and when your time is up, it'll be 3 minutes. So if you're here on another item, we'll have that comment later. This is just general public comment. Ms. Judson? And then Ms. Bryan, Laura McGee, and Joan Poston. That starts us off. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. Lynn Judson, and I wanted to express how thankful I am that you work so hard and that you do so much for our city. I'm concerned, though, about some of the recent crime that's gone on. I understand that it just recently, in fact, I thought it was yesterday, there was a stabbing of a 60-year-old man at the Walmart lot at First and Wadsworth. And there were 2 murders in Belmar Park. If I have this correct, there are things reported on your website. I just want to ask you to pay close attention to this and to figure out how we can get at the root causes of some of this local violence, and also to implement a program where you can coordinate and get communication from the police department and work closely with them. Also, I would suggest a proactive program to recruit and train new police officers. So better communication with the police, and a proactive program to recruit and train new police officers. Perhaps we could ask for them to be present in some of these higher crime spots that have been identified, for them to monitor those spots and be there. Just their presence would stop some of the crime. In addition, I know this will be a long night. I wanted to just mention one thing that I forgot to say 2 weeks ago about radiation, which is high frequency electronic radiation from not microwave ovens, but from cell phones and from communication towers, and even from space if we implement the 5G network, which would require antenna to be erected every 300 feet, every 100 meters throughout the city. I would urge us to be very cautious about this, because it's been designated by the International Association for Research on Cancer as a #1 carcinogen. That's the high frequency electronic radiation, just like asbestos and cigarette smoking. And the 5G summit that we spoke about is going on now. It mentions impacts on our brain, on our reproductive system, so basically causing sterility, like birth rates have gone down 26% in some locations where 5G's been implemented. There have been people with insomnia, headaches, numerous health problems, cancers of the brain, cancers of the hearing of the ear, causing not only deafness but paralysis of facial nerves. So I would be very cautious about getting into the 5G networks at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bryan, Ms. McGee, Ms. Poston, Mr. Urban, and then Rennie Barthel.
I'm Edie Bryan. Is this on?
Yep.
Okay. Didn't seem like it was. Okay. All right. I used to be on city council, but that was quite a few years ago. And my husband and I have gotten older, we've discovered. And so we decided that we should move to Carmel Oaks, which is in Ward 3, and the same ward that I represented. And I am here to tell you that things are not good in our ward. We have this is where Carmel Oaks is, where we live, and where it used to be have the chicken farm restaurant. If you really want to know how to get there, everybody knows where that was. But then things are not good over there. And the police department, and I'm speaking in support of what they are doing, and they are doing a great job. But there are multiple calls over there in the night, every single night. This is not good. This is not good for anything. And I don't know what you guys can do about it, but this is not why we moved to Carmel Oaks. It's not why we chose to live in Lakewood about 40 years ago. And I know the police are doing just about all that they can, but it's going to take doing more than what is happening now. They're doing their best. There is a new developer after the chicken farm folded, and they don't seem to quite know what to do. And when they do, they came around, and the one meeting they had piping paper, and they had a little dab of pizza sauce on it, and that was the refreshment. And people were laughing. Yeah, people were laughing about it. You know, it was so inappropriate. I'm saying I don't know what you can do as council people, but I'm saying things are not good in our ward and in our neighborhood. And if you can do something, do it. We love Lakewood. We planned on staying here until we're going 6 feet under, and it's getting harder, frankly.
Thank you. Ms. McGee?
Good evening again. I'm here to talk about crime in Ward 3. In Lakewood Estates, on the weekend of August the 16th, we have at least 2 confirmed shootings in Lakewood Estates. Neighbors report a third incident as well from that Friday to that Sunday morning. At 3 a.m. on the Sunday morning, which makes that August 18th, I guess, shots were fired. A shot went through a home, through the window, upstairs bedroom, into the wall 1 foot from an occupant's head. So we have been seeing increasing crime for the last 2 years. I think that you received an enthusiastic vote for Lakewood to keep Tabor money, and most of us understood this was going to the police department. And I guess I have some very specific questions. How many new officers are we getting to expand the police department to put officers on the street? We have seen rampant development in the last 3 to 4 years. And does the city manager have a plan where she comes to council in the budget? And we have at least a baseline of officers per units of population? And have we been increasing the police force in the last 4 to 5 years? And what are the plans in this next year to do that? And I would also like to know where I can go and look at the allocations of the Tabor money that the citizens gave y'all to keep, and how that is specifically broken out, because frankly, we just don't see police officers anymore. And the few times I encounter one, they try to be as helpful as they can. The police department is very responsive if we put in a request for the patrol officers to try to come through, but they just do not have the force to be able to respond like that. And so we can see driving is starting to become a free-for-all because people know we don't have people even patrolling on the streets. I mean, Wadsworth is getting hazardous with people turning across multiple lanes of traffic, making U-turns right in the middle where there's no clearance. So we really need increased police force, and I'd like to know what your plan is and how we keep addressing this as Lakewood grows, that we automatically build in new police officers. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan Poston, John Urban, Rennie Bartel, Andy McKeon, and then Ms. Goldman.
Good evening, I'm Joan Poston. And first, I would like to thank Mayor Adam Paul for attending the Bridge Church yesterday morning and allowing Pastor James to pray over you at our altar. Bridge is a community church with a scriptural basis and a life-affirming mission, and it's important to see people engaging. So that was Sunday. Saturday, I went to a meeting, and there was Sheriff Jeff Schrader, and he was talking about 1A. This is a Tabor sunlighting. They want us to not get our refunds for the next 7 years in the Jefferson County. And I said to him, well, you're going to have a hard sell in Lakewood because we did a vote in Lakewood to let you all keep your money, and we haven't seen anything that has been done with that. And the real problem that we have is this. So Jeff Schrader said that if we didn't pass this 1A in Jefferson County, there'd be a real problem because he was going to have to cut 2 floors in the jail. And it would really affect Lakewood the most because we actually take up 40% of the Jefferson County jails. And I was shocked to hear that much of our citizenry is in jail. This is, I don't know why, this is the way it is. So I wanted to say that we need to look into some of the things with the Tabor money to go for the police departments. And I don't come and complain without having some solutions. So here's one of the things that I'd like to suggest. We have a police academy, and we put people through this police academy, and they automatically go to other cities. The retention rate on the people that we keep from the police is not great. I would like to see some kind of ordinance that if we train you, you stay for a year and a half, 2 years. I think that when I trained to be a medical technologist, they trained me and they said, yeah, you stay. I believe that because we have this crime rate going up, that we do not have the infrastructure for the growth that we are looking at right now. And I'd like to know what makes a great city. And therefore, I'd wish to state that I would like to limit the growth that we're having right now. And I would like to say no to all of the zoning ordinances that you are thinking about doing today, because we do not have the police to help with this situation. Thank you very much.
John Urban. Okay. Rennie Barthel. Good evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Rainey Barthel, and I live at 1011 South Harlan Way in Lakewood. I'm a Lakewood native and have lived in Lakewood my whole life. I attended Lakewood High School and Creighton Junior High School, and I received my college degree from CU Denver, as well as I attended CU Boulder and Metropolitan State College. I have chosen to live in Lakewood because it's a great city, and it always has been, and I've lived at my current residence for 11 years. I work 2 jobs. One of them is with the Jefferson County Public Schools. So I'm also a mother and a wife, and I find it very difficult to come to these meetings because of my 2 jobs and my children. As you all know, Lakewood is growing at an astronomical rate, and some properties in the city are being asked to be developed without proper due process. Many of my neighbors are elderly and have lived in Lakewood their whole lives, and they do not have access to the current social media platforms that some of us younger children or people do. Many live on Social Security and have fixed incomes and are unaware of what is happening in their own backyards. I would hate to see these fine people pushed out of their homes, or worse, become homeless. I'm concerned about property being developed without adequate street access, where the developers and the plat say that the streets are 50 feet. I went with a tape measure myself. They are about 28 feet and 35 feet respectively. I am also concerned about maintaining the neighborhood's character and the proposed highly dense construction of these new homes. I know this would cut into the profit margins of the developers, but I would like Lakewood to not be overdeveloped with multifamily housing, forcing small lot sizes with a chance for more crime like we've seen in the last few weeks. We have access issues, due process issues, and character issues. How is that this is happening to our city? I previously attended a planning meeting where one of the members said that he had an interest in a particular property, and he said he could be objective, yet he moved the motion forward. I feel our voices are not being heard. I hope you can see how this development feels forced and pushed through. The R1 43-1 zoning is intended to keep the rural character of the surrounding neighborhoods. If the rezoning takes place, I'm afraid that Lakewood will become another Denver. Thank you.
Yeah, so just for clarification, if this is on the rezone, that's for later. It needs to be part of the public record. So just if anybody else wants to speak on the Richmond rezone, that's actually a separate public hearing. This is just general public comment.
Okay.
But welcome, thank you. Mr. McKeon. We got constitutions up here.
You got it, guy.
Must be coming.
I should be quizzing you guys.
Uh-oh.
You know.
Uh-oh.
Come on now. All right, I'll give you a quiz. What are the 5 rights in the First Amendment? Come on, guys. 5 rights in the First Amendment. Anybody? Speech? Press? Religion? Peaceably assemble? And what I'm doing here, petition the government for redress of grievances. First Amendment, right. Well, I'm with the South Jeffco Rotary Club, and our club is sponsoring the distribution of free pocket Constitution books to either high school students. Now, I gave one to each of you guys. Next time I'm going to quiz you personally, so you better study. I'm asking you, since you have one, to sit down with your children or grandchildren or nieces or nephews and go over it with them. Go over it with them. I'm asking you to also go in, if you don't feel comfortable going into a high school class, maybe you can go into an 8th grade class. If you don't feel comfortable going into a class, some people don't feel comfortable doing that, find somebody that you know, maybe an attorney or someone else in the community that is willing to go and talk to our children. The idea is to go over the Constitution with them and encourage them to read, study, and learn what's in the U.S. Constitution. That's our goal. It's not political or partisan. You can go on our website and you can see Senator Bennett did a message for us, and Representative Perlmutter, Senator Gardner, former Governor Hickenlooper, Jared Polis when he was a representative. They're all on our site. So we want the students to look at our leading elected representatives in Colorado and watch them and then email their offices. Email their offices. It's like bennett.senate.gov, gardner.senate.gov, perlmutter.house.gov. You go to their websites, there's a contact button, and you fill out the form. We want the students, and you can do it as adults, to give their comments about the Constitution. What did they like about the Constitution? Maybe what's their favorite amendment? If they added an amendment to the Constitution, what would that be? But to interact with the elected officials. So you don't have to have Senator Gardner or Senator Bennett have to go to schools. The kids can watch this on our YouTube site. I got 30 seconds, I see. So also, I left some extra constitutions back on the table. If any one of you want an extra constitution, you're free to have it. My contact is on the back of the book if you need more. Donated compliments of our Rotary Club. I'm also part of the Lakewood Service Organizations Coalition, and Mayor Paul, I have to thank you. I think it's one of the greatest things you're doing as mayor, to bring all of our service groups and our faith-based community together to work collaboratively to help our community. I think it's a model, and I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I would like to keep you going, but.
I'm complimenting you.
No. Yeah, thank you. We'll just do this one. Perfect. Thank you. Next time I'll pool your time. Ms. Goldman. We have a special guest here tonight. Yep. Former clerk. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much. Mayor Paul, members of the City Council, my name is Karen Goldman. I'm a longtime Ward 3 resident, and many of you may not know that for just shy of 15 years, I served as Lakewood's second ever municipal clerk. Well, since tonight is the last official meeting of your current city clerk, Margie Greer, I felt compelled to come here and make some comments regarding my friend and colleague, and I know she's giving me the look, isn't she? Yes, okay, all right. Well, Joni Mitchell once said, "You don't know what you've got till it's gone." And I am very hopeful that you will not wait until she vacates that seat to realize what an asset she has been to this organization. Margie, so I'm a little nervous about this. So anyway, I'm going to hazard a guess, and that guess is that once, but just once, A decision that she made, an answer that she gave, some advice that she gave to you was something that you disagreed with. And I'm also going to hazard a guess that in addition to you disagreeing with what she did or what she said, you didn't even like it, right? But what I really hope is that you understand why she did what she did. That you respect the decisions that she made, the action she took, and that the advice that she gave. Margie is very highly respected among the municipal clerks in Colorado. When she was president of the Colorado Municipal Clerks Association, she worked very hard to upgrade and professionalize our educational programs. I have been very fortunate to have been a recipient of her counseling, her advice, and even her commiseration. And I do highly respect her. I love her professionalism. I love her sense of humor. And I love the fact that she can be pretty outrageous when she wants to be. So I just want to say that it has been my honor to work with Margie. I'm very happy that her leaving her position does not mean the end of our friendship. And I will say you were very lucky. In fact, in the 50 years that Lakewood has been in existence, you have been very fortunate to have 3 very competent and highly professional city clerks. And of course, I include myself as part of that, right? Okay. And I know that that tradition is going to continue with Margie's replacement. So I thank you for the amount of time you've given me. And Margie, if I have managed to embarrass you, then my job here is done. Thank you.
All right, that exhausts the general public comment roster. Anybody else wish to speak under general public comment? Great. Seeing none, we will close that. And Andy left already, but he does an incredible job, and there are a lot of these back there, so please take him. He's in the schools all the time, and it's a really important thing. He takes great pride in that, so thank you to him. The 2D dollars are sitting there. They've been deployed to the police. They've been deployed to infrastructure projects. The only thing that's sitting there is $8.5 million waiting for open space to purchase. Council's in those discussions right now. There will be a separate budget every year that'll show you exactly where those dollars will go. The public safety piece is the only one of those 3 pots that is allowed to add personnel. And so we take crime serious. Every one of us up here, our police department is pained by what we're seeing. Driving out of control. If you're on their Twitter feed, people driving over 100 miles an hour every day up and down our streets. And so they are cracking down in every which way they can. We have increased over the last 4 years. We've added over 20 agents, which is not just agents, that's support, that's fleet cars, that's fleet mechanics, as well as community services officers, expanding their budget by about 25%. And that doesn't mean that we sit back. And when you also look at crime stats, you have to be careful. And there was a memo issued today from our police chief. I'd encourage you to reach out to your council members that really talks about how crime is tracked in different things. But we are cognizant. It is not great to see some of these instances. And we're going to continue to work hard, and this council will continue to take that very seriously, as public safety is job number 1. And we are proud of our police department, who are out there every day trying to make sure that we are safe. So with that, we're going to go into an executive report. Ms. Hodson.
Yes, thank you. And I'd like to add that at our study session on September 16th, you will hear specifically where the dollars are being spent, and you'll see the allocations for the police department and what that means. So we'll go into greater detail. And I appreciate the concern of the citizens and can assure you that there is plenty of dollars being allocated for our police department in the year 2020. So on September 16th, please be in attendance, and we'll have some detail around that. So thank you. Just a few things in the interest of time. On September 5th, we're having the Candidates Information Night, September 5th. So this is for all candidates running for any office, mayor, city, or city council. It'll be at 3:30 in the Cabinet Room. We'll do a brief intro, and then we'll draw names for ballot name placement. So that's September 5th. Also, coinciding with that, beginning on Tuesday, September 3rd, we're going to start coordinating all of our direct response Lakewood information again. So candidates and city council members will be able to access citizen comments and citizen feedback and requests. It's a weekly report will be generated and distributed to all city council members and candidates that includes a list of each request and staff's response. We've done this in the past, but I just wanted to let you know, signal out that begins September 3rd. Again, that meeting is September 5th. And most importantly, I'm so delighted that Karen Goldman was here because she gave an amazing tribute to one of the best, and that's Margie. And just on behalf of our staff, do you know that Margie's been our city clerk for 18 years? And she is an amazing city clerk, and we are going to miss her deeply. And we love her very much. Here's what she says she's going to do. She's going to party, and she says she's going to go drinking, but I know her idea is drinking is like one drink every 6 months. I happen to know that about her. She's going to go on road trips. She does a lot of reading, cooking. She's going to sleep past 5 a.m. So I'm going to call her at 5:15 every morning. She wants to spend time with her grandchildren. And I don't know if you know this, but Margie's an avid writer and has a couple of books in her head. And I think maybe about local government, we'll have to see. So Margie, from all of us, and especially from the staff, we are going to miss you dearly and wish you the best. So thank you for your years of service with the city.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Hodson. And there was a mention, Sheriff Schrader was here last week, and you can check that out. And he did talk to some of the instances of what they're dealing with. And that's a good piece of information. Next up, we have the consent agenda. The use of the consent agenda has been made to expedite council action. It contains both resolutions and ordinances. First reading ordinances. Resolutions are items of routine nature. Members of the public will have an opportunity in a moment to comment on any of the proposed resolutions. First reading ordinances appear on the agenda only for the purpose of setting future public hearing dates and ordering the newspaper publication of the proposed ordinance. No public comments will be heard this evening on first reading ordinances 2019-32, 33, and 34. The public will have an opportunity to comment on the proposed ordinances during the scheduled public hearings on the dates set tonight by City Council. Any council member may request any item on the consent agenda be removed for separate discussion and action under general business. Will the clerk please read her last consent agenda into the record, please?
Cheers, I will. The consent agenda consists of items 8 through 11 inclusive. Item 8, Resolution 2019-28, authorizing assignment to the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority of a private activity bond allocation of City of Lakewood pursuant to the Colorado Private Activity Bond Ceiling Allocation Act. Item 9, Ordinance 2019-32, repealing and replacing portions of Chapter 14.25 of the Lakewood Municipal Code concerning floodplain management. Item 10, Ordinance 2019-33, to rezone a portion of land located at 6045 West Mississippi Avenue, Lakewood, Colorado 80226, County of Jefferson, State of Colorado. And item 11, Ordinance 2019-34, amending the Lakewood zoning ordinance.
Thank you very much. I will now open the public hearing on resolutions 2019-28. And that's it. Nobody's signed up. I'll close public comment and I'll ask for a motion.
Mayor Paul, I move for all ordinances introduced on first reading to be published in the Denver Post, with public hearings set for the date included in the ordinance, all of which are included in the consent agenda items introduced into the record by the very best city clerk in all of Colorado.
I second.
So motion and a second. Please cast your votes. That passes 11 ayes, 0 nays. Will the clerk please read item 12?
Item 12 is the continuance of Resolution 2019-25, submitting to the registered electors of the City of Lakewood at the regular municipal election to be held on November 5th, 2019, a ballot question to authorize the City of Lakewood to provide telecommunication services, high-speed internet services, and/or cable television services, either directly or indirectly with public or private sector partners.
I'll now open the public hearing on item 12, and before I go to public comment, I know that there'll be an amendment made potentially, and so if either Councilor Franks or Councilor Skilling just want to read what that is so the community is aware as well before we go to public comment.
This is telecom.
Okay, my bad. Thank you. There is not one tonight. So now we'll go to the public comment, which is Mr. Ash, you're first. And then we have Mr. Stark, Lynn Judson, Sandra Singer, Karen, I can't pronounce the last name, and Jim. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. I made some comments with regard to this a couple of weeks ago. I'm assuming that you all have a copy of option B in front of you that Margie gave me. Great. Okay. I'm sure I'm not the only person here and across the country that has picked up a ballot on election day and tried to make heads or tails of the way something was worded and trying to figure out what I'm voting on and so forth. I understand there's a legal thing as to why it has to be worded, so forth, but I think it's fair to say that most of the people who are going to pick up their ballot in November aren't going to understand this whole broadband issue. They're not going to know how much we've talked about it and how it's progressed to where it's gotten today. So if they're going to understand what they're voting on, the language has to be as simple as we possibly can, but still making the legal requirements that whatever that is. And as I look here, it says, reestablish the city's right to provide all services restricted since 2005 by Colorado General Assembly with their passage of Senate Bill 05-152. And then it goes into all this big paragraph of stuff down below. That, for the average voter, is just going to go right over their head. The simple thing that people have to understand when they just try to vote on this, if it's going to go to the ballot at all, is that should Lakewood have the right to make their own decision on whether or not to ever implement broadband or other internet services? Somehow it needs to be communicated to them that you're not considering it now. We've got budget problems. We don't have the money to do this now, but even if we wanted to, we couldn't do it because the state says we can't. So if we want them to understand what they're voting on, they need to understand that this is just to give us the right to decide 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever, if we have the right to do this. And I think this is a good start, but I just think it needs to be simplified a bit more so that people can understand what they're going to be voting on. Because when we were talking about this in Lakewood Advisory Commission, I believe it was Longmont, Colorado, could have been Fort Collins, but I believe it was Longmont, put this issue to their voters, and the wording was so convoluted that they didn't understand what they were voting on, and they voted it down in a heartbeat. And it took them the better part of 2 years to re-educate all the citizens in their city as to, no, that's not what we really meant. This is what we really meant. And when they clearly explained it to their citizens, it passed with flying colors, and they got a great system up there. So the simpler we can keep this, the better a chance it is to get passed. And again, we understand you're not going to implement and start digging tunnels and laying cable, but it needs to be a little bit simpler so that they can understand what they're voting yes or no on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stark? Gone. Ms. Judson? And then Sandra Singer and Karen Gordy. And then Jim? Can't read your last name, but you're a property owner in Lakewood.
Hello. Former FCC Commissioner Michael O'Reilly has said there are dangers to municipal ownership of broadband and high-speed internet. You can Google that. I may have sent it to you all, but name is Michael O'Reilly, FCC Commissioner. He's concerned particularly that all points of view are able to be aired and received by people. So please look at that. And about the Fort Collins issue, from what I understand, the implementation of broadband is not complete there. It's even the first 1/5 of it costs about $30 million. So that would be, the whole thing would be about 120 to 150 million. Now, do we want to get into this as a city? Isn't this going to break our budget? I'm just saying I'm not sure we should do this. Thank you.
Ms. Singer, good evening.
Hi, I'm Sandra Singer. Been a resident of Lakewood for the better part of 40 years, and in my same house for 37 of those years. So my boyfriend lives in Longmont, where they have internet, and he's paying about $60 a month. I've got Comcast. I have friends who have CenturyLink and are getting out of it. We don't have choice. We don't have good choices. They don't give us good service. When I tried to cancel my cable and just keep the internet and phone, they tried to increase what I was paying, not decrease it. So I'm stuck at about $200 a month. We need more choice. We need the ability to take it away from the profit motive, which is all CenturyLink and Comcast care about, is their profit motive. And people are cutting their cable all over the country right now, so they're kind of in panic mode. So those of us who are still stuck with it, and we need internet, that should be, at this point, in the way things are in the world, you have to have high-speed internet. If you don't have it, you're at a distinct disadvantage. Whether you're a working adult, or you're a kid, or even if you're retired, as I should be. But in any case, we need that choice. And I didn't realize what the first gentleman was saying, that this is just to give you the right, to give us the right to do something. That should be a no-brainer, and I agree with him that it ought to be more easily worded. But I think those of us that have been at the beck and call of Comcast or CenturyLink all these years with no other choice, we need to have a choice. And it needs to be a fundamental right that we be able to get high-speed internet without paying through the nose. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Karen, Gordy? Okay. And Jim? Can't read, but you are a property owner in Lakewood. Okay. Anybody else? I'll close public comment. And I'll ask for a motion. There is actually an amended version that Councilor LeBeer will present.
You want me to?
Please.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2019-25.
Second.
Councilor LeBeer.
Just to be clear, the amended version we're talking about is in the packet, so it's in there as option B, so that's what we're referring to. Do we want to just move forward there, or are we asking questions? Or
There's questions, certainly. And we do have Mr. Fellman here with us tonight. We don't have a presentation. But.
Okay. Well, then I guess I would just add, Tim, maybe you can help us out. This is sort of the simple language, right? Is this as simple really as we can get while meeting our sort of obligations to be able to get this on the ballot?
I'd like to ask Ken Fellman to answer that question.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Fellman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Nice to see you again. While I sympathize with the gentleman's comments about simplicity. My advice to you is to come up with ballot language that, if it passes, is not susceptible to legal attack. And while the statute, like many statutes that come out of the Capitol, are not the model of clarity, what it says is that before a local government may offer to engage in providing cable television service, telecommunication service, or advanced service, an election shall be called on whether or not the local government shall provide the proposed cable television service, telecommunication service, or advanced service. I have always interpreted that to mean, in order to be safe, you need to list out those terms. And actually, as we talked about, and I won't get into it in any kind of deep detail, but the last time I was here, those aren't even the right terms they should be using in today's technology, but that's what the statute says. So to simply say, reestablish the authority we had before 2005 might win in the event of a legal challenge, but you might find a judge to say, you didn't say what it said in the statute. So somewhat regrettably, because I'm all in favor of simplicity when we put something before the voters, I would suggest that to best insulate this from attack, that you use those terms.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Appreciate that clarification. And I just want to comment on a couple of things just that I heard. So just real quick, as it's already been mentioned, this doesn't require us, or this doesn't start us down the path of implementing some sort of municipal broadband. This is really just the exemption to allow the city to have the opportunity to and the potential to engage in public-private partnerships or whatever opportunities might be out there. So that's what this is about. On the clarification piece, I did want to add that is the reason we have things like the Blue Book and the whatever Jefferson County's version of it is. I forgot what they call it, but it's like a little white pamphlet that describes what the language actually means and what it's supposed to do. And so I would encourage all the voters, especially this election, since there will be a lot of things on the ballot, to really comb through that and really understand what it is you are voting on. I also want to mention 5G, because that's come up quite a bit. Those things are wholly and completely and absolutely regulated by the federal government, not by the city of Lakewood. So there's not a whole lot we can do on that front other than encourage our members of Congress and the executive branch to do things that are in the best interest of the citizens. Just wanted to mention that. I guess I'll just respond to the FCC person. That person works for the private sector in broadband, so I'm not sure if I would take him as a credible person to talk on this particular issue, and he's been criticized widely for his comments. And that's all I have. Just if anybody else has anything, thanks.
I just want to thank Mr. Fellman for that clarification. Helps a lot. And there was a comment, we certainly are not in any condition or I think any willingness to go out and try to raise $300 million to provide internet, but we are an animal that likes home rule, and we like to have that ability to partner. So for instance, a community like Centennial has partnered with the private sector to bring in broadband services and other digital type things. So that's really what this allows. And this isn't the city trying to, certainly for me anyways, go into any sort of municipalized type service on our own. And we've seen other communities do that. Longmont was able to do that. They also have a utility. So most communities that have a utility of some sort, power utility, they're more able to do that with their right-of-ways, whereas we're not equipped for that. So I think this is a good opportunity. We've heard feedback from the community that they'd like to have this chance, so I will be supporting it. Yes, let me get through. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I appreciate what you said, Mr. Fellman. During our last talk about this up here, there was interest in maybe having language that was more suitable for Lakewood. And the answer, or the reply that we keep getting, is that we need to have language that is conforming with everybody else in the potential of a lawsuit. Am I understanding that right? And could you please expand on that?
I think the way I would describe it is not you need to have language that conforms with what everyone else has done. But I think if we, at the same time, if we are trying to insulate against a challenge, and again, you've heard that sometimes the industry challenges these campaigns, sometimes they don't. Nobody knows when or if they may challenge the passage of one of these ballot measures. It hasn't happened yet, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't. So if you look at what any of the 70 to 80, actually I think it's more than that now, that may be municipalities. I think when you add other jurisdictions, it's well over 100 Colorado jurisdictions that have passed these things. If you look at what they have done as models, and you know that they have not been challenged, you create an additional defense. So if you use language that closely mirrored City A or County B, and someone were to challenge it in court, one among the many arguments that we can make in defending the city is, why didn't you challenge it when this other jurisdiction did something similarly? You're really just picking on Lakewood here, and you don't really have a valid legal claim. So that's not the be-all and end-all of why you should look to other jurisdictions, but they do pose a very valid and I think reasonable model for how other communities, Lakewood or otherwise, may choose to put their language on the ballot in order to best protect itself.
Councilor Roybal.
Thank you, Mayor. This question is for Mr. Cox. I was asked by several constituents the simple question, in our charter, and it's been 50 years, thank you, but does this in any way violate our charter statute or charter regulations and respect to this internet?
Councilor, do you have a provision in mind that,
like for example, if we were to compete, the city to compete with a business, I think the charter pretty much says that we can't do that. Is that, am I misunderstood, or is that correct?
we'd have to look through it with a couple of minutes to just verify the language that's in there. I'm confident that many charters in home rule communities around Metro Denver and around Colorado are going to have similar provisions. It hasn't been a
well, I'd just like to verify. That's all I'm asking.
Well, if you want to continue with the discussion, we'll take a look at the charter and see if we're missing anything.
Councilor Roybal, do you have the exact provision or chapter in question?
Not.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Gutwein?
Thank you.
Bless you.
So I appreciate that from the last discussion that I think it is more clear with the potential amendment option B, and I would like to see us use that more clear version. I agree ballot language is difficult, and our goal is always to get things as clear as possible, but I think that this will achieve that while still ensuring that we're not susceptible to unnecessary legal challenges. I also just want to say, I will be supporting sending this to the ballot unless Tim finds out that it's against our charter. And I think, to me, this is just about ability to partner, provide better service to our community and more options. And in this day and age, someone mentioned this, but access to high-speed internet is access to opportunity. So I think we should do what we can to increase access, and I appreciate Mr. Fellman, all of your help through this process. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor LeBaire.
Thank you. For Mr. Fellman, Have you had an opportunity to review option B that we have in our packet, and do you think that's sufficient to get us across the finish line here?
Thank you. I have reviewed it, and I do think it's appropriate. Yes.
Okay, great. Then I will go ahead and make the motion to make the resolution or amend the resolution to say what option B says, which I can read.
Please.
All right. So the motion is that the amendment would read, shall the city of Lakewood, Colorado reestablish the city's right to provide all services restricted since 2005 by the Colorado General Assembly with their passage of Senate Bill 05-152, including the authority to offer telecommunications services, high-speed internet services, advanced services, and or cable television services to residents, businesses, schools, libraries, nonprofit entities, and other users of such services either directly or indirectly with public or private sector partners as expressly permitted by Colorado Revised Statute Section 29-27-101 through 304, competition in utility, quotes, competition in utility and entertainment services, end quotes, without limiting its home rule authority.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the amended language. I think that in the charter, all I can find is under franchises, which doesn't prohibit franchise, but I don't see any other provision. Councilor Franks, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I've done like 30 different keyword searches for all topic. I'm finding nothing, but I'll keep looking. But I've found nothing that makes a hit yet.
Councilor Roybal, do you think it was under the franchises section or?
I remember reading something, and I'm not sure exactly because I was reading so much, but I remember reading something to that effect. And I'm not sure. I may be mistaken. I just wanted to make sure I get clarification that, in fact, that isn't the case. And I want to make sure that we do this right.
Well, I'm no lawyer, but I have scoured the charter a few times, including tonight, and
we've been through it front to back a couple times, and there's nothing that addresses competition with the private sector or anything of that nature. So,
Mayor Pro Tem.
In that case, Mayor, I move for the adoption of Resolution 2019-25 as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Please cast your votes. That passes 10 ayes, 1 nay, the nay being Councilor Bida. Councilor LeBeer, your light's still on. Mm-hmm. Okay, will the clerk please read item 13? Mr. Fellman, thank you.
Item 13, Resolution 2019-29, submitting to the registered electors of the City of Lakewood at the regular municipal election to be held on November 5th, 2019, a ballot question that would authorize the City of Lakewood to provide waste hauler services by contracting with one or more private waste haulers via a competitive bidding process and to assess a fee therefore pursuant to Section 30-15-401 of the Colorado Revised Statutes.
Well, thank you. So I will now open the public hearing, and before we go to public comment, Councilor Franks has worked on an amendment that will be presented. So before comment, I just want the community to hear what that is, so you'll have the full opportunity.
Thanks, Mayor Paul. Well, kind of as the other speakers have been talking, it's really important for us, if something is going to go to the ballot, whether you agree with it or not, that the language be as clear as possible. And so with that, Councilor Skilling and I worked on expanding the language around what services would be provided. Per the meeting we had the last time, we wanted to make sure that folks understood that everyone that is required to have the service, there'd be a base fee involved. That way folks could make their decisions. And then we wanted to also talk about inside the language about a not to exceed or a price ceiling. And so Mayor Paul, I wasn't sure if you wanted me to read in this now or just talk to those few additions that we made.
Just talk to the few additions, if that's okay.
Yeah, so again, just expanding the dialogue about the service, the language about the services, the base amount, and then a not to exceed, or basically a threshold for the annual increases that would be authorized by council.
That's perfect. And when we discuss, we can put it down there here in a little bit. So the only person who indicated a desire to speak, Mr. Keys, do you want to speak on this subject? Mr. Shore, there's two of them for 13, so you're on there too. Mr. Shore, you're next. Ms. Singer, you are on there. There were two of them. My apologies. And then Mr. Gordy. Okay. Well, come on down. Nice to see you again.
No, thank you, Your Honor. And did you all get the email prior to?
Sir.
So I can keep it brief? No, again, you know my position. I again urge a postponement for a year. I think the city can get a much better deal. A lot of things are happening quickly, and I just don't think there's broad-based support. I just think you're going to create a big hornet's nest politically. I also take great exception to what the staff wrote in some of those promotional materials online, claiming there's going to be a 29% increase in the diversion rate. That's not going to happen. That's misleading the voters. I don't know if you saw the Denver Post just this last Sunday. I'll leave this with you up here. You can take a look at the headline. The recycling industry is troubled. And I think you need a year to really analyze, hey, where are we going with this? Don't lock yourself in. There's problems with that. If beyond voters being misled, it takes the focus away from things you have to fix with curbside recycling instead of thinking we're going to get this great 29, 39%. It also gets us to overlook better potential options like curbside composting with drop-off facilities. You'll get far more return. It has to be studied, but the potential for that is great. With or without this going on the ballot, there's going to be a lot of investigative journalism to get to the bottom of this finally. What works best for the community? What are the problems? How bad is the recycling industry? Will it improve? Can curbside recycling be affordable? Can we use places like Quail Street? Also, when you set this up, you are giving a waste hauler an enormous monopoly. They're going to make millions off this. I think the city needs to be much more tenacious and tougher to get the best possible deal. Waiting 1 year won't hurt at all. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. Come on down. Yep. Sorry. Sandra, you're up. And then Karen. Welcome back.
Sandra Singer again, and I forgot to mention before I am in Ward 1. In any case, I'm just a homeowner, and I have noticed that all of our local haulers have been bought up. I've been with Pro for years. They were great, but now Waste Connections owns them. I tried calling around to find another local hauler. There are none. They have all been bought up. We have 3 options that I concluded. If somebody knows more, they can address this. There's Waste Connections, Waste Management, and Republic. That's all I was able to find. I don't trust any of them, if you want to know the truth. Not to give me the best deal, not raise my rate overnight. I had 2 rate increases in a row with no explanation from Pro before I found out that they had been bought out, and I could not get through on the phone. I still can't get through on the phone. One of my neighbors got a card in her door from one of their salespeople, and they must be overworked and overloaded too. I was able to get a deal from her but it's not much different than what I had originally with the senior rate. They're no longer bringing it to my door. That's fine. I'm able-bodied. I can do that. There are people who are not. But I just think this needs to go to the ballot. Here we are, 70%, is that what it says, I think, on your website? 70% of the municipalities in the area, they have some kind of either a public-private partnership or the city does it. I don't know anybody in a lot of different districts around this area, around the metro area. Everybody seems pretty happy with their services. I've seen some pretty crazy stuff on Nextdoor lately. I mean, people accusing the mayor of taking money from these companies and Ramey from taking money from these companies. Everybody's looking for a conspiracy theory. I don't see a conspiracy theory going on here. This is just a common sense thing. We've only got 3 choices anymore. It's not like we're trying to put a local company out of business. They've already been put out of business. It's just the 3 monsters that are doing this nationwide. It's not got nothing to do with anything that Lakewood has been doing. I've heard that conspiracy theory too. It has to do with a nationwide consolidation. That's what it is. So I think it ought to go to the ballot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen, Gordy, are you here yet? Not? Okay. Yes, sir. I was getting to the second sheet, Mr. Keys. Come on down. Yes, sir.
Never been here before.
I was going to say, and I appreciate your signing. I can't quite. Good thing I know you.
Thank you, Your Honor. My comment about this is, first of all, regardless of how it goes, of how are going to be dealing with our trash pickup, my concern is that every hauler, they have a different way in which they will deal with what they will recycle. So I would just request that the city of Lakewood deal with all of the carriers that are sanctioned to pick up trash in Lakewood. Find out what exactly they will recycle. And they're all different. Some will pick up this, some will pick up that. And so it's very difficult to know, because I really am very conscientious about what I put in there. But there are certain times when I'm not sure because they find out that if there's too much in there, it all goes to the landfill. So I would impose the city, regardless which way you decide to go, find out from each carrier that's sanctioned in the city of Lakewood what they recycle by the number, so we would know what we can put in our curbside recycling. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming out. Anybody else wish to speak on this topic? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Mayor Pro Tem, you have your light on. Was that to make a motion or to?
Oh, I have a couple of questions.
Please.
In reading the proposal, I had some concern that we may be planning to phase out the Quayle Street facility. Is that correct?
Good evening. Jonathan Wachtel, Sustainability Manager. No, there's no plan to phase out the Quayle Street Center. That will, as far as I'm aware, it will remain open.
Okay, and are we considering expanding to other areas, a facility like Quayle Street where it's sorted recycling instead of single stream?
I'm not aware of any effort currently to open a second drop site. We know that is an issue that's been brought up over the years. So it's on the radar as something that could be beneficial, but there's no active search at this moment that I'm aware of, but we are working on a slash.
I can add to that as well. If we're able to find a slash site, that may be a place where we can add some recycling as well. Still unknown in terms of a site though.
Thank you. It appears that every potential hauler will require recycling. Do we require they verify that what we pay to have recycled will be recycled?
I mean, this is such a interesting topic, right? And it's constantly in the news, and it's really hard to stay on top of, and the markets are constantly changing. What we wrote into the RFP that went out was our best effort to make sure there was accountability so we know what is actually happening. So we wrote in there that all the haulers would be required to document where they were taking recycling, to which of them certified and official material recovery facilities, or MRFs as you'll hear people call it, and that they needed to take and collect all materials accepted at those material recovery facilities. We wrote it that way because we know sometimes those change based on markets. We also required that they document the volumes, and if there were contaminated loads, if people not doing things properly, that was also documented, that then went to the landfill. So the best we can do, at least to start, is to understand how big a problem is that, how much is going, and then, as time goes by, we can learn from that transparency. But I think that's the real key, because we heard a lot from the community about the fear that people were paying for a service and not knowing where it was going, or even some accounts of watching haulers just go ahead and collect it with the trash truck. So that transparency was a key piece.
I would certainly like to see verification of that. I like asking people to vote, although there are some decisions that council needs to make on its own, and lately we have been passing a number of them along to the ballot. But I'm certainly in favor of having this voted on. Thank you.
Sit down. Go ahead. Thank you. You're good. You were headed that way, so. There was a question as to, one of the things that we were hopeful would be there can be a lack of communication, lack of customer service. So written into that RFP is customer service standards. And you heard, you can recycle this, you can't, single stream, all these. Is there anything within this that addresses those concerns?
I think I hear two parts to maybe that's a question. One is, what can you put in which bin, and those types of information pieces. And yeah, we wrote into the requirement that there's a certain amount of education and outreach that haulers need to do about the services and what goes where. So that's one. The second is on overall customer service, and in the several years of outreach and feedback we got from the community, we heard regularly about the difficulty in getting responses from haulers and customer service. So there's requirements in there that any hauler serving the city under this system would need to have a dedicated customer service agent, dedicated phone line, email, all of those contact information, specifically for Lakewood customers.
Thank you. Councilor LeBear.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick here, but I just had a quick question. There's been some significant concern from some of the neighbors about what kind of services would be provided within the RFP. And I think I got some clarity on this earlier already. However, I just wanted to get some additional clarity in this form. Is council going to have assuming this if we send it to the voters and it gets approved, is there going to be additional time for council to have some engagement in what the type of services are going to be provided and what that looks like?
Certainly, there's a lot of details that would need to get worked out before the city entered into any contract. What we have right now is a response to an RFP that was put out to really understand what we might be looking at, so that there was a realistic decision in front of you all, or as you're weighing tonight, whether to ask the community to make that decision without that kind of base level of information that we were able to get from the RFP. And unfortunately, we can't share all the details, but at least we can provide kind of highs and lows and some ballpark information to help inform that. But there's a lot of details that before a final contract with any hauler gets signed would need to get worked out. And so I think there's a lot of room there in how we structure those agreements and the details that allows for a lot of feedback from council.
Great, thanks.
Councilor Roybal.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions. One of them, there was a lot of concern about complaints. For example, if the service provider is not doing quality of service, not picking up trash, or they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. What's the remedy? How can we fix that? Is there a complaint system in place where we can go ahead and punish the provider for every complaint they get, and they investigate it? They say you're in violation of the contract. Is there some kind of fee assessed to that complainer, that thing there? Is that, I mean, there's got to be some kind of remedy. So when customers come in and they say, hey, they're doing a bad job, this is why, they didn't pick up the trash, and I'm paying for that. I call them up and they say, oh, I'm sorry, we'll get it next week. So if we call now, we call the city, is there some kind of a system by where we can go back and fine the companies for not doing their job?
That's a really important question. Thank you. Currently, no, we don't have any role in that for the haulers that are licensed with the city and that people independently hire. However, in the RFP that we put out, there's two pieces. There's actually three elements in the RFP that we issued that address your concerns. Number one is that all customer complaints need to be documented along with the resolution to those complaints and submitted to the city. So there's full accountability on all of those from the hauler. The second is that in the criteria for deciding who wins a contract with the city, one of those criteria is their ability to provide adequate customer service and resolution to those. So that becomes a criteria piece. And of course, in future bids, that can be used as consideration. Third is that we actually built in penalties into the RFP. So they agreed and signed an agreement understanding that we could fine them for incidents, and there's a list of those in the RFP of those types of incidents. And of course, if they were in a major violation of the agreement, we could terminate the contract.
Okay, thank you. And then another quick question. When you talk about your base fees, have we come up with a magic number yet of what the base fee is going to be? One. And the second question onto it, in my neighborhood, what we usually do is we have seniors that live in the neighborhood across the street from each other, so they share disposal of trash. So is there going to be an added fee to every house attached? And who's going to administrate those, the administrative process to pick up the monthly fees and the cost for the trash company? Is it the city that is collecting the money, or is it the trash company?
Those are several questions built in there, so I'll try to do my best to address each one. If I forgot one, let me know. I think the first piece there is there a base fee? You know, what's the lowest fee somebody could pay if they are really using very little service, or don't really want to use much service at all? They're sharing. What is that lowest fee? We haven't determined that yet. What we do have is the small, medium, and large subscription size for a trash container with all the other services that are outlined included. And so there is a range of pricing for that size small. What some other cities have is even lower price if somebody doesn't want to have trash service, but they still need to buy into the system. And what's the administrative fee that the city would charge the residents? So that is still to be determined if the city will charge any administrative fee. The prices that we got in the RFP, we're assuming that all of the fees and the billing and all of that burden was on the waste hauler. That doesn't necessarily mean in the end that's the best route to go. We may be able to determine that we could do billing at a lower cost than the haulers have included in the bill currently, and so that's the type of final decision making that needs to be done if this were to. So we haven't made a decision on that yet. Correct. Okay. But we did ask the pricing that we do have and that we're showing the range on includes billing, administrative fees that the haulers would charge if they were in charge of all of that, any types of cart fees, fuel surcharges, and it also includes that cap on and council's role to approve any escalation in cost.
Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. Typically, other municipalities, when they have this type of arrangement, there's franchise fees. Could you please talk a little bit about what percentage you're looking at? And where does that money typically go? Into the general fund, or could you please talk about that?
We have not included any franchise fees because this is not an exclusive agreement with one company for the entire city. It's not the same as Excel or Comcast, I believe, that we have franchise agreements with. So there's no franchise fee. There's no fee that the companies are paying to the city for the right to service. We're just offering them the efficiency and asking them to give us the best price and asking them to compete against each other to see who can give us the best price for our community.
All right. Ms. Hodson, would it be possible to display the proposed language? Thank you very much.
It's a little.
And Mayor Pro Tem, would you mind making a motion?
Find my list of motions. I move for the adoption of Resolution 2019-29.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, a second, and Councilor Franks, do you want to discuss further your amendment, or do you want to make a motion for adoption of your amended language?
I think it just makes sense to make the motion for the amended language, if that's all right with everyone. And again, just to recap, where we expanded the language was on the services to be provided, included language about a base amount. So the voting public understood that everyone who was not able to opt out would have a base amount to be paid, and then also put in kind of the annual increase limits. So I move that we revise the language to read, shall the city of Lakewood, Colorado, in order to increase access to recycling and composting services, reduce neighborhood trash truck traffic, and establish transparent pricing and customer service standards, be authorized to contract with one or more private waste haulers via a competitive bidding process to provide waste, recycling, and seasonal yard waste composting services to all Lakewood residences of 7 or fewer units, and to impose fees on such residential property owners at a base amount for waste and recycling, with optional services for additional cost, with all services not to exceed amounts and annual increases authorized by City Council, exempting all such revenues from the limits of Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution, while providing homeowner associations the capability to opt out of such requirements.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. This is to the amendment. Councilor Gutwein?
I'd like to support this amendment. I think that it helps clarify, and we want to make sure that this is as clear as possible. And then I also had general comments. Is that
Let's
later?
wait for the general comments and just speak to the amendment at this point.
I support the amendment.
Okay, any other discussion on the amendment? So please cast your votes against this. This is just on the amendment. And that passes 10 ayes, 1 nay, the nay being Councilor Roybal. Mayor Pro Tem?
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2019-29 as amended.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. As I'm reading through this, it's talking about exempting all such revenues from the limits of Article 10, Section 20 of the Colorado Constitution. I'm assuming that's Tabor. Have you considered putting that language in there instead of this? I'm just curious.
I mean, we wrote it standard.
that's the standard language when referring to Tabor. Sometimes there might be a reference to the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, but the citation to the constitutional provision is what's typically used. I think it's what we have in the Tabor question that was done a while back.
Mayor Pro Tem Abel?
Not particularly to this exact motion, but I was told that we can't regulate service because of state law to multifamily residences of more than 7 units or business and commercial properties. Can we, as a home rule city, later come back and take those provisions and change them for under our home rule powers?
I think it's been determined that we are preempted from doing so by state law. If that were to change, then we'd be able to bring it back.
I thought we could override state law as long as we were more strict, not less. What prevents us from going there?
The threshold question of whether something is a matter of statewide concern, local concern, or mixed concern, and if it's not an area of local concern that's been determined to be within the Home Rule Authority, then we can't regulate in the same area without conflict.
Is there case law in this?
Yeah. There, as to this provision, I'd have to research it. I think Mr. Graham did some research on this in reviewing the resolution when it came along. But this is language we've seen in other examples, I think. Yeah.
I would like a definitive answer on that sometime in the near future. Thank you.
Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. Well, I will be supporting sending this to the voters. This has been a conversation that's been going on for a long time in our community with great passion on both sides. And I think that it's appropriate to send it to the ballot and let the people weigh in on how they would like to proceed with this issue. I just wanted to take a moment to thank staff for the incredible amount of work that has been done on this over the years. And I think that having that research really helped our community have this conversation in a productive way. And I think that hopefully it will help people make an informed decision as they go through all the questions. I also really appreciate everyone in the community who's weighed in. I think it's led to ultimately the best possible outcome, which is this vote. So thank you to all, and I'm excited for the November ballot.
Cool. Jonathan, thank you to you and your team, you and Lynn. We've been talking trash for a long time, and we started out, and a lot of other communities started the same conversation, and I think our colleagues in Arvada might be doing the same thing. They're not. Okay, so they're not, but there was some discussion. So a lot of communities are weighing this, and it really invokes a passion amongst our residents to have these conversations. And so I think it's important that we let them take part in this conversation. And somebody mentioned it earlier, there's conspiracy theories out there about this, but it's pretty simple in that there have been opportunities that staff has found through lots of research that we could find ways for potential better service, more options, and a decrease in traffic as far as trucks and road usage and road damage. So I am gladly going to support this. And again, want to thank you guys for all your hard work for many, many years. Any other comments? Please cast your votes. Passes 10 ayes, 1 nay, the nay being Councilor Roybal. Nice job. Okay, will the clerk please read items 14 and 15 into the record?
Item 14, the continuance of Ordinance 2019-12 to rezone land located at 3113 South Wadsworth Boulevard, Lakewood, Colorado, 80227, County of Jefferson, State of Colorado. And item 15, the continuance of Ordinance 2019-15, vacating right-of-way for South Ammon Street between West Duquesne Avenue on the north and West Eastman Place on the south.
Okay, so this is a continuance from a public hearing, and I would like to invite Staff Planner Stephen Wilson to open our presentation. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and members of the City Council and members of the Lakewood community. My name is Stephen Wilson, and I'm a staff planner with the City of Lakewood. We're here this evening to continue the rezoning public hearing for 3113 South Wadsworth Boulevard that was started on June 10th. Because this is a continued public hearing, staff will not repeat our presentation. However, I'd like to reiterate that the Planning Commission recommendation is for approval. Since the June 10th public hearing, the applicant has made an effort to address the city's comments by reducing the overall number of units, carving out more than 2 acres that can be dedicated or will be dedicated to the city for park space. They have limited the use to single family, and these changes are formalized in a development agreement. A paper copy of the development agreement and an updated site plan were placed on the dais in your packet. The document might be easier to find in your packet because there's an 11 by 17 that was a Z fold, so hopefully you can find that. Did you find that? Okay. So at this time, I'll invite Jason Pock with Century Communities to the podium to present the changes they've made since the last meeting. Thank you.
One clarification, wasn't the applicant Richmond American, not Century?
Yes, I apologize. Thank you, that was my mistake. I apologize.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? My name is Jason Pock. I'm a land manager with Richmond American Homes, 4350 South Monaco Street, Denver, Colorado, 80237. I want to thank you for your time here tonight. I want to thank council first and foremost for giving us the opportunity to present our proposal. A thank you to staff for being so patient and for the extensive knowledge they've shared with us. And I also want to say thank you to the public for speaking with us. There have been very many people, especially in the past several weeks, who have taken a lot of time with me personally, over the phone, at a neighborhood meeting, in various ways. And the overwhelming majority of the folks that I've spoken with have been very respectful, have helped me to appreciate new and different perspectives. And I want to say thank you for engaging in this process with us. That being said, I want to run you through a quick presentation here. I'll do my best to keep it to 15 minutes or less and answer any questions that all of you might have. I see that I've got the presentation here, which is great. I think maybe the best thing for us to do is sort of get reacquainted, start where we left off at that June 10th council meeting. You'll recall that council was very generous with us to give us an opportunity to continue this hearing and really take some of the feedback that we received from the public and from the council members and sort of go back as a team and see if there were ways that we could put the puzzle pieces together in a different way, so that maybe we can't do everything for every group of stakeholders, but we can do something positive, something meaningfully positive for each of them. And that's what I want to propose for you today. But like I said, let's begin with where we came from, and that's the original application. This should look familiar to you. 91 single-family homes across approximately 12.2 acres. This is the Schnell family farm. The house product here is fully detached homes, but these are not your sort of prototypical 2,000 or 3,000 square foot homes on a generous 6,000 square foot lot with a 3-car garage. This is not the sort of typical suburban home that you might have in your head when you think of a detached home. And that's by design. These homes are inspired by townhome living. These are 1,700 to about 1,850 square feet, 2 and 3 bedroom homes, each with a tuck under 2-car garage, the main living space being on that second floor, available rooftop terrace on some of these. These are alley-loaded homes, and we think that this house product is offering a housing diversity that's not found in Lakewood today. There are all kinds of conversations about attainable housing, and we all have our different perspectives on what attainable housing means. What specifically that price point is that makes a home more or less affordable, more or less attainable. What we do know, though, is that each and every year, the prices of homes goes up and up and up. And one of the ways that we believe we can help to solve this is by getting creative about how we build our homes. And with these townhome-inspired, fully detached homes, we think that we have a lot of the sensibilities of the townhome lifestyle, lower maintenance, more of a lock and leave feel. But we have some of the benefits of a fully detached home too, being quieter, less contact with your neighbor and so forth. I also want to comment on this original plan here before we move on that the design, albeit different than some of the surrounding areas, we think is complementary to the area. By having these alley-loaded garages, the front of the home, the front door, the front facade with the quality materials and the sort of living first is what dresses the surrounding areas. So when you look to the west or to the south, for example, by and large, what you're seeing there from those existing neighborhoods are the best parts of the homes, and the sort of utility function of parking your car are on those alleys facing each other. And we think that that's a positive. But we're here to talk about the changes. And so I want to show you this revised plan. And what I want to draw your attention to right away is the area in the northwest corner, approximately 2.5 acres that we're committed to not build in. We keep the same spirit of the plan. We keep the same house product, but this 2.5 acres achieves many things for us, and I'm going to talk about that. At a very high level, we're reducing the build out of the community from 91 homes to 77 homes. That's a reduction of 14 homes. It's about 15%. And again, nothing to be built in that 2.5 acres in the northwest corner. I want to talk about compatibility as we move forward here. For those of you who are maybe not familiar with Richmond American Homes, we are the largest home builder in Colorado, but I think more importantly, we are one of the only national home builders headquartered right here in Colorado. And I think this is important because it means from our superintendents all the way up to our executive suite, we are employees who live and work right here in Lakewood and metropolitan Denver. And I say that because this is not a distant field office receiving orders from afar. We are people who have equity in our communities. We live and work here just like all of you, and I hope that that makes us better shepherds of the communities that we build. So with that, when we talk about compatibility, one of the most common measures of compatibility is use. Residential use and residential use versus residential and, say, industrial. We also talk about density. And the metric we typically use for density, the measurement is how many homes per a certain area. Typically, the number of dwelling units over the certain acreage. So when we look at 77 homes across 12.2 acres, we're about 6.4 dwelling units per acre. When we look at the surrounding areas here, and that means the retirement community, apartments, condos, townhomes, and so forth, we're by and large seeing 11 dwelling units per acre, 15, 16, even 17 or more. So I think by this measure, we could say that this community is compatible with the area because its impact is less on a certain acreage than the surrounding areas. Less impact, and by that I mean fewer residents, fewer vehicles, and so forth. Now, full transparency here. I've had a lot of communication with homeowners lately, and someone brought to me a perspective that I hadn't heard before. She told me that I was wrong about density and kept repeating it, and I didn't understand why that was. And so I asked her to run me through it, and she very patiently did. And she explained to me that in her mind, density was more a matter of the separation of the buildings. So from her perspective, a condo community with multiple households under a single rooftop appeared to her to be less dense than a community where you have just one household in each home, because that meant there was a wider space between each of the structures. That's a very, very fair perspective. It's something that I hadn't thought about before. I can't do anything to refute that. What I can say is, by this measure, I believe our impact is less. And I offer it up so that if I communicate nothing else here tonight, I hope that you'll understand that we really have been listening and we really have been trying to address the various stakeholder concerns. Another very important comment that I believe it came from council at the June 10th hearing was a term that was zoning creep, I think was how it was used. The idea was Lakewood has a map of future growth areas, this purple bubble map that you may be familiar with. And when you look at the expanse of the Schnell property, all 12.2 acres, there's a gradient to it. The edges of that future growth area, they're not clearly defined. The opacity sort of changes. And so the question becomes, are we really looking at purple or are we looking at light purple? And what does that light purple really mean? Does that mean we're creeping beyond the area designated for that future growth? And is that the right thing to do? Is that what the spirit and the intent of the future growth map was? And so by carving out those 2.5 acres that I was talking about in the northwest corner, I think that we're helping to address this concern. You'll see that 2.5 acres in the northwest corner there, and you'll see it doesn't matter now whether there's some shade of purple or any purple at all. That's the area that we're committing not to building. And if you look in the north area, you know, there's a little bit of a line drawing principle here. Do we consider different shades of purple? That area in the north, just adjacent to the no-build area, is what we envision for open space of a different kind, a stormwater pond. So I want to move now on to what I think is the most meaningful part of the changes that we've made to our application. And I want to address really what the purpose of that 2.5 acres is. We've heard from so many people that the Schnell farm is private property, but it has been there for generations and it has taken on a meaning and a role and a sense of place in this community bigger than just a single owner. And we wanted to find a way if we could set aside some of this open space. And what we propose here is to dedicate these 2.5 acres to the city of Lakewood. This 2.5 acres would be conveyed to the city of Lakewood. I want to be very clear about this. The city of Lakewood would take title to this 2.5 acres. There wouldn't be a conservation easement or some sort of open space designation that somehow we could argue the semantics about later. Lakewood would take title to this 2.5 acres to be used for some open space parks programming of Lakewood's choice. So would that mean a proper park with a tot lot? Would it mean some sort of passive open space? Would it mean some sort of trailhead for the greenbelt? This is something that we think is best for the city of Lakewood to steer. And it's difficult for us to balance various stakeholders' interests, hold the price point of the homes that we hope to build here at a certain level, but we think we can do this, and we think that this is a way that maybe we can't meet everyone's goal of preserving the space entirely, but we can do this meaningful thing for the city of Lakewood at no cost to the city. I would also like to point out that this 2.5 acres does have some existing structures on it. And I've got a copy of the Alta survey here so that I'm correct about this. I see 2 wooden barns, various chicken coops, and so forth. The goal here is not to destroy history. It's not to ignore where we come from. It's to find a way to try to balance our desire for housing diversity, our desire to give folks a place to live that's other than apartment living, to provide some sort of meaningful open space to make the community better upon our arrival here. And what we'd also like to say is that, if there's a way for other structures on the property, I shouldn't be the arbiter of what's historical and what's not. If there's a way for us to give the city access to photograph and document existing structures, to utilize those materials in some meaningful way on this 2.5 acre set aside, these are the things that we would like to do. So I'm reaching the end of my presentation here, and I'm happy to answer questions. I've got a development team with me to bring all of their expertise. But I think it's most important perhaps to talk about how we're going to make this happen. As many of you know, Richmond doesn't currently own the property. We're under contract to purchase the property. And there was some concern from council members and from members of the public that what does it mean to say that you'll dedicate parkland if you don't own the property yet? What happens if the zoning gets approved and for some reason Richmond won't close on the property? And so after quite a bit of discussion, we think we've come up with a solution that works for everyone. And that's to create this development agreement that sort of provides the clause to the city, gives the city that measure of assurance that we are going to do what we say. So in essence, this development agreement is saying that until Richmond satisfies these obligations, until these conditions precedent have been met, the rezoning won't take effect. And so staff has seen the development agreement. We've worked furiously to put this material together. We'll be happy to answer questions about it, but the major points of the development agreement are that we are committing to residential use only, that we are going to restrict the number of homes to 77, and that we will make the required land dedication of 2.5 acres. And maybe just one final comment on public outreach. I think that this is an area where, in hindsight, we could have done a better job. And I appreciate that that there are different points of view, but I am grateful for the learning that we've done here. I have spoken at length with very, very many people, and I wish that we could sort of turn back the clock and express things in different ways, but I hope that this process has made us better applicants in future projects that we bring maybe to the city of Lakewood or elsewhere. With that, I think that we're ready to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. So I appreciate that. I'm going to open public comment at this point. And so, just as a reminder, we've received a lot of correspondence, and I know it can be frustrating because you may not hear back from your council members or your mayor, but that is because this has continued to be a quasi-judicial process. So all of your emails have gone into the record and been made available for all of us. 3-minute time limit. We do have a lot of folks signed up, and everybody signed up thus far does not favor the question, so we appreciate that. And we'll certainly welcome you to speak, but if you want to just say, hey, I agree, and maybe not have redundant comment, that'd be great for us to continue through the evening. But I will start with a pooling request from Miss Christensen, who's going to speak on behalf of Derek Williams, Cheryl, and Susan. So if you want to come down and kick us off, good evening.
Thank you very much, Mayor Paul and City Council members, and thank you for letting me speak. I did speak at the June meeting as well. I'm Katie Christensen, and I live in Silver Valley Townhomes. We are just on the southwest corner of where this development would be. Mayor Paul, as I committed to you at the June meeting, I participated in the community meeting held by Richmond Homes. I also mentioned that I come from a family of builders and developers and was once in real estate myself. I understand the desires of the tax and profit dollars involved here. The Richmond Corporation has scaled down the development from 99 homes to 77 units. In my June statement, I discussed the general concern of more people coming to use the already overcrowded walking paths and park area. This has an impact on the animals that reside there, as well as the additional bike, walking, skateboarding, and other activities on the sidewalks and paths. The urban design of these buildings that are almost right on the park caters to a younger population that most certainly would use the park and the open space area. I have done a population study of existing projects built or in the process in our area, and I've provided you a copy of my presentation tonight so that you have the figures in front of you. The new apartment complex, the Windsor at Pinehurst, 3950 South Wadsworth, has 360 units. They're using a formula of 2+1 residency in each unit. 2 weeks ago, they were 96.14% occupied. My calculation of 360 times 3 equals equals an additional 1,080 people impacting this area. Going down Wadsworth east on Quincy, we have the new Pine Ridge Retirement Community. There are 180 independent living units, 96 assisted living, and 42 memory care. Using the formula of 180 times 2, 42 or half of the assisted living, and 0 of the memory care adds an additional 225 individuals. Not counting the caretakers that will be impacting the area. These two developments have the potential to bring an additional 1,302 people impacting our roads and facilities in the area. A new townhouse/rental development was just finished on Northampton Frontage Road. I'm sorry. With a huge cluster of apartments behind these units and south of Sister City Park. The newest development has 24 units, adding potentially 72 people. I was unable to get the number of the people in the cluster behind this new addition. I see people from these units coming to the park all day and evening, enjoying themselves. With these new developments, the potential of human impact on traffic, shopping, and very importantly, the park area would be visited by an additional 1,374 people. The automobile traffic is already overwhelming. There are other reasons for not developing this area. Given that the Hodson Ditch goes through this land, there was once a creek running through the property. I'm wondering if there has been a study investigating the potential existence of the precious mineral gravel on this farm. If so, this would immediately make development a moot point. Is the city of Lakewood required to make this investigation? Historically, this farm was used for cattle grazing, field trialing, bird hunting, and other outdoor activities. Time passes and development happens. I have lived in this area since 1985. I have always enjoyed the beautiful old buildings, vehicles, and at one time the horses tied up in the little corral out in front. Colorado seems to be tearing down an abundance of our precious Western history. I would encourage the council to investigate the precious mineral possibilities on this land and consider that this is the last historical former working ranch in the area. I believe that this farm should be preserved as a piece of beautiful history it is. Tax dollars and development profits should not be the focus when considering the forever deletion of this charming little farm. Thank you again so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so again, if you would like to add to that or just want to say, hey, I agree, that's great. Mr. Kumpf? He's still here? Mr. Fry? Yes, sure.
Yeah, Howard Kumpf, 8759 West Cornell Avenue, number 3. I have a question procedurally. I signed up for both the ordinances. Do I get 3 minutes at each of those?
No, sir.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So the building of a through street from Wadsworth to Emmons and Eastman is to create a shortcut for all southbound Wadsworth traffic wanting to go west via Eastman or Hampton Avenue. Traffic control devices will need to be added, causing additional traffic chaos. Eastman Place already has 2 well-used pedestrian crosswalks. The first is at 300 feet west of Ammons, and the second crosswalk is 1,000 feet west of Ammons Street, and it is located on a sharp, visually restricted curve located on a small hill. The new through street would add traffic to an already hazardous curve. We don't want to have a new connector street created. Regarding the rezoning, Councilman Johnson and Goodwine stated on June 10th that the density was a no-go for them. And the city planner stated that the 2,250 square feet lot with 91 homes on 11 acres does not allow for MNS suburban. Only MNU allows for squeezing in the smaller setbacks needed. A jump from agricultural to urban, to me, is wrong. The new proposal of granting 2 acres to the city of Lakewood still keeps the density of homes at the same 8 homes per acre. No lower density was really offered with the 2 acres being eliminated. Alleyway garages, in my opinion, are cost-cutting construction feature that new residents later regret due to the difficulty of navigation. They eventually leads to lower desirability and encourages street parking. These valley garages, to me, are too crowded. And regarding the Schnell farms, how can MNU zoning ever justify replacing an 1891 built farm and the rare, irreplaceable ambience of an aesthetic uniqueness of a spring-fed lush forest retreat and grassland replaced with glass and steel and plastic and cement and asphalt? Last Thursday, I walked the entire Hudson Ditch from the west open space boundary, walking straight east through the high grass and reeds, passing down through the patches where deer and coyotes had slept last night. Then approaching the main farm buildings, walking north along the fence, the lush trees and shrubs and grass were now a thick forest concealing the structures. The freshly mowed front yard and hayfield, the natural water wellhead and the crank handle and cupola roof and the farm machinery transported my mind back to the 1920s and 30s. It was mystical. It felt like a different world. Wadsworth Boulevard traffic was not heard. It was unbelievable to me. At that site and time, I started to feel tears well up. Unbelievable to me. I turned around 180 degrees and looked at the Bear Valley open space. My eyes still tearing up. How can we justify denying our school children and our grandchildren the mentally refreshing respite of walking and contemplating on these unique, beautiful grounds. I respectfully request you to turn down these two ordinances. Thank you.
John, did you wish to speak or you just wish to? Okay. Yes.
My name is John Fry. I've been a resident of Silver Valley for over 20 years. The question we should be asking tonight is what we can do to save this historic and valuable resource to people and wildlife. The impacts of this proposed rezoning on myself and other longtime residents of this neighborhood are all negative. The loss of wildlife habitat, including 100-year-old large trees, increased pedestrian and bicycle traffic on the Greenbelt and Bear Creek Bike Trail, increased vehicle traffic on Eastman, Cornell, and Ammons, and especially on this very busy stretch of South Wadsworth, and having densely packed homes with an unattractive design that is incompatible with the existing neighborhood. All of these impacts of the proposed rezoning to current residents are negative. I see no benefit to me and my neighbors from this project. This is a much too extreme change from an environmentally sustainable farm to a totally urban, densely packed, massive buildings. When I look at the site plan, there is only concrete, asphalt, and rooftops. It is asking too much of us to allow this damage to our neighborhood. Even if it means not having the 2 acres given to the city, it would be far preferable to have 10 or 11 homes on 1 acre lots than 77 of these urban style homes. All we are asking the council to do is nothing. Keep the zoning as it is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And again, just to reiterate, we had a whole round of public comments, so please, can we speak to the changes that were proposed and kind of move from that second phase forward tonight? Jaiya, Lou, and Elizabeth? Yeah. Oh, you don't want to speak? Okay. Oh, that's good. Well, thank you for coming. All right.
Yeah, I'll be speaking using Elizabeth and Anne's times. So I'd like to pull out my slides. I've prepared a very nice presentation for you guys, as nice as the Richmond homes. So could you pull it out? Or? Thanks.
And just for future reference, we request that we have those ahead of time so we can make sure.
Oh, yeah, I sent it out this morning, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then Peter Wolf, you're next, and then Teresa, and then Craig. And that exhausts the sign up for this right now.
Mayor, could you restart my timer here for 10 minutes? Thank you. All right. Dear council members, my name is Jai Liu, that's L-I-U. You can call me Jay. I'm from Ward 5, 8799 West Cornell Avenue. Today, representing the people I have talked to from Ward 1, Ward 4, and Ward 5. And our organization, the Schnell Farm Living Preserve, I'd like to express my concerns of the rezoning issue and would like to let you know we are here to support you guys to make the smart decision. This is the Centennial Schnell Farm, bordering the busy South Wadsworth and the beautiful Greenbelt. So, which one would you like to live close to in Lakewood? Ugly single-family skinny homes with dreaded traffic, or a natural farm that supplies abundant food and fruit trees? If you think my cartoon is exaggerating the beauty of the Schnell farm, let's take a tour that the Lakewood Historic Society took back in 2014 on the Schnell's property. Look at the trees and flowers. Was I exaggerating? Who doesn't love ponies? Who doesn't love giant trees? Who doesn't love sitting in the shade of giant trees and drinking pure spring water? Who doesn't love families who have demonstrated their extraordinary faith in love and endurance in the past 131 years? Who doesn't love the spirit that builds everything from scratch and turns wilderness into heavenly habitat? So thanks for allowing me guiding you through the tale of the Schnell. The Schnell farm is the last remaining working farm from the late 1800s in our area. It was built and maintained by the same family with all the original buildings. There are 7 buildings mentioned in the National Register form, and they were all built by Mr. Fred C. Schnell and his hired hand, a guy who is only known by the name Rooster. The farm was irrigated by the Hodgson Ditch, and the house uses the natural spring water from the ground. So here are the quotes from the 1997 National Register form. The fact that the farm exists at all in this booming area is remarkable. Another one. In fact, it is the only significant surviving example of Bear Creek Valley's agricultural past. Remember, guys, those were from 1997. And I'd like to remind the residents of Lakewood that many more famous places in our area are also listed on the same National Register, such as the Marty Brown Summer Home at South Wadsworth and West Yale, as well as the Red Rocks Amphitheater. So, my first question for the people of Lakewood is, if we don't preserve this, what should we preserve? So now let's look at Richmond's new plan. First, with the wonderful assistance from the City Planning Department's Development Assistance Division, Richmond is applying for the mixed-use urban zoning. So what's allowed on a MMU? Bars, clubs, utility facilities, wireless communication facilities, and even gas stations. Do we think they are compatible with surrounding areas? Absolutely no. Also, sorry for my ignorance and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding about the plat Richmond has submitted is that they don't have to follow through with it. But let's just take a second and look at the supposed plats. I don't know what you guys think, but I saw ugly single-family skinny homes and 100 more kids every morning at Westgate Elementary School. And what are the steps that Richmond will take to ensure those 100 kids will be stuck on the school parking lot forever and reminded of the history of the place where their new homes are? Step 1, take photos of the farm before demolition and reclaim the barnwood to make benches here and there. Step 2, bulldoze the beautiful and historical farm. Step 3, name the new community as Legacy at the Schnell Farm. Perfect. Also, I'd like to remind the council that a farm is a wholesome goodness. Cutting it up into pieces is not what we want to do, as what Richmond has suggested. So people not from our area like to ask, what are your concerns? Okay, so let me tell you. 1, anything besides single-family homes, anything could be built with MMU zoning. 2, the population density problem and the various negative impacts on our neighborhood that has been repeated over and over again in the past many months, including today. 3, which I think is the most criminal behavior to our future generations and Mr. Schnell Sr., the irreversible destruction of the non-renewable cultural, historical, and environmental resources. But there are hopes. For example, the developer could further reduce the number of homes and plus do an adaptive reuse of the historical structure, which could mean renovate the main house and open up the HOA clubhouse inside. Or the more preferred one by our neighbors, which is to reject the rezoning request and let's buy the farm, private or public, and preserve the history. There have been many successful examples both locally and nationwide. Locally, I'd like to point out the Bee Family Farm near Fort Collins, and nationally, I'd like to highlight George Washington's Mount Vernon estate, which was saved by the local Ladies Association from ruin and run continuously since 1858. So our plan is to start a grassroots initiative to fundraise and purchase the property and preserve the working farm and creates a community hub of agriculture, history, sustainability, education, technology, community care, animal welfare, and of course, memorials that honor the Schnell family and the Lakewood's agriculture past. We have received strong interest and support from local residents and private investors. And instead of calling it a legacy like Richmond really wants, we will probably name it as the, Schnell Farm Living Preserve. So, the farm's future is gonna be great. So here let me ask the Lakewood residents, what kind of growth do we want? A, short-sighted and burdening. B, long-term and sustainable. Council members, today you have the choices here for you to make, right here, right this moment. I have some additional questions for the council, and here's one. What are the formal comments on the destruction of the farm from the city's Historic Preservation Commission? And what are the formal evaluations on the significance of the farm from the Historic Preservation Commission? As we all know, the city zoning law defines the HPC's duties, and only the city council has the authority to interpret the city law. So, could you tell me if the HPC has broken the law or not? I'm not a legal expert, so I would refer to the city council, the municipal court, the city attorney, or if you have an internal affairs department of the city to investigate this issue. Also, I'm wondering if the planning commission ever considered the HPC's comments and evaluations when the planning commission decided to pass this rezoning issue to the council, because that's the law. Another amusing question for the city council to consider. Why should we, the people, believe an administrative planning division is neutral while its name is so explicit that it is going all out to assist the developer? An even more fascinating and simultaneously very based question here. Should nearby homeowner residents' voices be heard more closely about a local residential rezoning issue or not? As we can see from the data I compiled based on the packet materials, the yes voices are very much made louder by the voices of non-homeowners or local residents. Especially, a group of realtors from RE/MAX 100 has swarmed into our neighborhood discussions and expressed their opinions, possibly motivated by their profit interests. Since we're talking about the locals here, if we remove those skewing factors, we can see the local residents and homeowners' voices are very clear, which is saying no to the rezoning. Here is a similarly intriguing but more sneaky situation here. In the video posted on Lakewood Speaks, which is a website by the city to collect public comments, at 3-minute and 15-second mark, the Richmond representative mentioned a neighborhood meeting on August 12th. However, if we go to the actual upload of the video on YouTube, you will see the video was uploaded on August 16th, which is 4 days after the supposed meeting date. Based on this evidence, I think it's fair to say that the Lakewood public and the local residents were not appropriately notified about a neighborhood meeting. I wonder if it constitutes a procedural due process violation. I'm not a legal expert, so I will refer to the city council, the municipal court, the city attorney.
Sorry, your time's up. Sorry.
If you have any internal affairs fund to investigate this issue. So we have full-blown respects to the private ownership and the free market.
Right.
And
your time's up. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it. Mr. Wolf, Ms. Stone, Mr. Jenkins.
Good evening, Mayor Paul.
Good evening.
Council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm a Colorado native. I have owned a home next to the farm for over 15 years. I sit on the board of directors of a prominent local business association and also a nonprofit foundation. And I am a voter in the city of Lakewood in Ward 5. I don't think that any of us can dispute that there is significant historical value in this farm. One of the last remaining homesteading properties in the city of Lakewood or the West Metro area. I think it would be a travesty for us to scrape it, remove all but a few outbuildings in the donated land and replace that farm with a development that I don't think is compatible to our values, the community, or what Lakewood stands for. I don't think anyone can dispute that the infrastructure, that South Wadsworth and the rest of the streets in the area already are overwhelmed by traffic. And with the increased development in other parts of the Southwest metro area, will become more and more congested without this development. So I ask you to just close your eyes for a moment. You're in a safe environment. It's okay. Take a deep breath. And to imagine that the Schnell farm has been revitalized, has been turned into a children's educational center for agricultural and historical education. Imagine that our youth in the local schools and communities and our families are able to visit this historical, valuable asset and to learn about the history of Lakewood, Colorado, and to learn about agriculture. And I find it ironic that up until a couple of years ago, I was able to go to local farmers markets and to purchase organic produce that was grown on that property. Wouldn't it be wonderful, won't it be wonderful, for our children to not only learn about agriculture, about history, about homesteading, but to learn about sustainable farming practices on a piece of property that can live for generations to come. Thank you for your time.
Teresa, and then Craig, and that is all I have. So if you want to add anything else, please line up and see Ms. Greer. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Paul, council members. Thank you for this opportunity for public comment. I hope you all received the booklet that I dropped off for you Friday morning. You should all have a copy of this. It's a sequel to the 8-page booklet that was in the June 10th packet that documented the many ways that this proposal violates the comprehensive plan and the housing study recommendations. The most fun part of pulling this booklet together was seeing how much progress you all have made in creating structures for achieving the comprehensive plan goals. The table on the first page shows you've been rocking in 2019. Congratulations on getting so much done in such a short time. I'm here to urge you not to lose ground by approving this rezoning proposal just to accommodate the applicant's backwards broken business model. The booklet outlines how their model is broken and the consequences, including anger, the anger that you're hearing in this room and that they heard at the August 12th meeting. And it points to a better way for 21st century stakeholders. The booklet coins a phrase to describe the outdated business model that seems to be guiding the applicant. Pages 2 and 3 document how this conquistador development model, the stance toward the community, has caused this applicant to ignore every single one of us every step of the way, including you. I found it quite generous that you, the decision-making body for this application, gave the applicant another chance at the June 10th meeting to adjust their design to better fit into its surroundings so it doesn't violate the comprehensive plan policies. I find it astonishing that they scorned you and blew that opportunity. I find it an interesting business decision for them to declare themselves inflexible about forcing their product on the neighborhood and to try to appease the community with the 2.5-acre consolation prize. After all this time, they seem stuck. And while they've been stuck, you've made 18 months of substantial progress toward achieving your comprehensive plan goals. To expect the city to stop its progress because this applicant is behind the times is ludicrous and counterproductive. Thank you for not ignoring the community voices. Thank you for not letting the applicant change the neighborhood character with an urban island in the middle of our peaceful suburb. Thank you for upholding the comprehensive plan and staying the course. Thank you for voting no on this rezoning, and yes, for continued progress on the city's strategic direction.
Thank you. Craig Jenkins? No? All right. I'll close public comment. Sure. Good evening.
I'm Connie Reddick. And I agree with Jamie on no on the rezoning. But once again, I'm going to bring up the thing of if it is built, that city council people, please, if it's low-income housing, if it's with tax money or government money, that somebody is watching what they're doing. This is very important that the laws are kept and that they have reasonable accommodation for people that are disabled, and also that somebody is watching the properties because we pay for them out of our government and tax money. Because you can't have a housing authority using their nose to sniff a carpet when office girls do not have the background to do inspections. So I'm please asking you to consider having maybe somebody from the city doing inspections. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Keys, looks like you signed up as well. Mr. Keys, did you wish to speak? Okay, all right. Now, anybody else? Going once, going twice? All right, we're closed. So, Mayor Pro Tem, will you please make a motion?
I move for adoption of Ordinance 0-2019-12.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Discussion. I have one quick question that I'm going to defer to my colleagues. So there is some indication of some historical structures being left on a parcel being deeded to the city, but are there remaining historical structures that are being demolished on the actual property?
Hi, Jason Pock here again. There are structures located throughout the property on both the 2.5 acres and elsewhere.
So where is the most historic structure?
I'm not. Can you hear me okay? I'm not sure that I'm the one to determine what's the most historical, but the message that I want to spread with all of you is that if there is an historical structure located outside of the 2.5 acres, we would like to work with the city on what can be done to either preserve or somehow, as the situation warrants, relocate that structure.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Gutwein?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple of questions.
Yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Keys, I'm sorry. Mr. Keys, I'm sorry. You are out of order, sir. I'm sorry. I called and asked if you wanted to speak, so I gotta keep some order. So I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. So the farm that is being discussed, that would be demolished, and then there's additional barns. Is that correct?
That's correct. Several structures located on the property. Our expectation, if the city didn't want to intervene on any of the existing structures on the remaining property, is that they would be demolished.
Okay, thank you. And the farm has the historical designation. Does that include the other, like the barn, for example? Or so would we be able to retain the historical designation, or is that gone if the farm is gone?
I'm not able to answer that question.
Okay, all right, we have to keep some order, please. Thank you. So.
Because my question is because there's multiple properties here, and so I'm just trying to understand if that designation applies to all of the properties or the farm, or just to better understand that. Thank you.
Hi, if I could, I'd like to invite Holly Boehm down with the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you.
I don't know if you want that.
I bet you we have an answer here.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Holly Boehm, Comprehensive Planning and Research, and part of my duties in that division is to manage the Historic Preservation Program and work as staff liaison with the Historic Preservation Commission. This property is on the National Register of Historic Places, which is administered through the park system of the federal government. And it has been designated as a district, so it includes the whole farm. If buildings were torn down, it would lose its historic district designation. Could one structure that remained be qualified perhaps to come forward to the local landmark or the Preservation Commission in Lakewood to be looked at as being a local landmark? That would be possible. But yes, once the buildings start to be torn down, it's affecting the whole district designation.
Thank you.
Sure.
Couple other questions. There was some discussion about the additional community meeting. My question is, how were the HOAs notified, and when were they notified?
That's a good question. I'm sure that we have a copy of the notification letter somewhere in our files, but we heard council's comments very clearly that we didn't do enough last time, and so we did our best to over-communicate this time. I kept a list of my own of homeowners associations, their addresses of record through the Secretary of State. I also have community managers' phone numbers and emails, and I made an effort to make a personal contact with every one of them by phone or by email, confirming that they had received it. Then, in the spirit of going above and beyond, I went through the county assessor's online mapping system, and I trolled through for what I thought might be other HOA communities that might not somehow be registered with the city of Lakewood for any particular reason, and I reached out to them as well. In one particular instant, I spoke with a community manager who informed me that he manages 2 communities in the area. One of them was outside of the radius of the notifications, and would I mind if he distributed the same invitation letter to that community, and I encouraged him to do so.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, with the rezoning development agreement that's before us, there's some mention about, the size of the property, 77 units, et cetera. If this rezoning were to go through, would it still be subject to question 200 and the 40 unit?
As the city manager just said, that's a good question. I looked through it a little while ago after that. I was alerted that question might come up. And, this is a zoning agreement. It's a part and parcel of the rezoning process. Once those entitlements are in place, it's going to be in the same spot for in terms of the allocation process, and potentially the over 40 unit process. I don't see why that would not be applicable to this project.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this has been a really tough one, and I think that all land use cases are always difficult. And you know, I do definitely support affordable and attainable housing. However, we really have to look at everything on a case-by-case basis. This particular project just has a lot of challenges with it. And of course, one that's been mentioned a number of times is the historic site. I have concerns about approving the demolition of this site, or approving the rezone that would include the demolition of the historic site when it's one of the few left in Lakewood. I also think that when we discussed having an additional community meeting, I think that sentiment is clear from the community that the farm was a significant, important portion of this, and I appreciate very much the effort that you went to re-engage the community. I appreciate that there's a proposal here that includes 2.5 acres, and that the zoning has gone down, but I don't feel that we're quite here yet. What I'm hearing from our community is that we really need to be incredibly thoughtful in where and how we grow, and for me, this is not a great fit yet based on this zoning and the loss of the historical designation. I also, in general, have concerns about the fact that you're able to just take down historic sites without any additional process. There's no protections. So I think that that's something that I know Councilor Vincent has brought up in the past, and I continue to learn more about this, but this really raises that issue and the importance of that issue. So unfortunately, I do not feel that I can support this rezone at this time.
Thank you. Well, I don't quite understand how you, and this is no offense to you here, how do we get through to this process when we have this historic designation? Maybe I don't know enough about our processes or lack of processes, but it seems to me that before this was even ventured down, that we would have had better conversation. And I'm sorry, if you want to sit down, you can sit down. It's just because it may have to come from our attorney. So help me understand that when we have a historic district on the National Registry.
Right. The presentation done by the gentleman a little while ago focused a lot on the local historic preservation process, which is what Ms. Bain was here to talk about. Well, that's her job, is to oversee that program. She was talking about the National Register, and I accept her comments as accurate as to what has to happen under that process. Under the local process, it requires property owner consent
right,
to pursue an application for historic preservation. So if the owner applicant is not willing to be an applicant or is not willing to consent to an application, it appears to be their prerogative in terms of making decisions about the future of the property. It's private property. They have that authority over it. But that's on the local level, not the national level.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Harrison.
Thank you. Good presentation. I have a couple of questions about the specifics, and I don't know if you want to. One of the problems that we keep seeing again and again and again is the number of visitor parking in these multifamily issues. In that I didn't see anywhere where it looked like there was a possibility of any visitor parking?
Hi, Jason Pock here again. We did a count just this afternoon to confirm the parking for the homes. You'll recall that every home has 2 parking spaces in a garage. We know that's not for the guests, though. We also have designated parking spaces within private alleys. There's 26 spaces of those total. We also have on-street parallel parking in the right-of-ways that are created through this project, 124 spaces there. So when we add 124 spaces on the right-of-way, 26 spaces designated in the private alleys, and then the garage spaces of 154, we have 304 parking spaces, which is roughly 3.95 spaces per home.
Okay, hats off to you. You heard our message. I appreciate that. One other question that I had was on the percentage of density per acre. The whole property, I believe, is 12.5 acres, correct?
I think it's 12.2, but it's around there.
Okay. And then you said that it was when we, so that would be the remaining would be 10.8, about 10 acres, correct? That density per acre should be a little bit higher, I believe, when we look at the numbers. I think it should be closer to like 8.
You're right about that, and I didn't want to go through each iteration of the calculation, but you're correct. If we do 77 homes on 9.5 acres, representing kind of the remaining parcel, we're at 8.1 dwelling units per acre. Still, though, when we look at the surrounding neighborhoods, I think from the slide presentation, they were on the order of 12, 13, 15, 17 in that range. So we're still below them, albeit higher if we're including just the 9.5.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think in your presentation, one of the things that you asked about was, did light purple mean creep? It does to me. I feel like, especially that particular area, I am a homeowner in the Silver Valley we have a rental unit there. I've walked this area. I know exactly what it looks like. And I believe that it's an absolutely perfect place. So, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Abel.
My concern is that we are zone district shopping. These are single-family homes. They do not at all conform with any of our single-family home zoning requirements. So we pick mixed-use neighborhood. Mixed-use neighborhood is intended to accommodate a high level of pedestrian activity and scale. Mixed-use buildings and projects are encouraged. It is also intended for a range of residential uses, generally along collector streets. So my concern is this doesn't fit R1. This doesn't fit MN. It would seem to be akin to spot zoning. It is on the edge of that purple cloud. It's not really in the growth area. So I'm concerned, and we did note that staff had discussed the R0 zoning with you. R0 doesn't exist and didn't at the time. So I have some concern about for you that you might have been led down the wrong path as far as R0 goes. However, we don't have it. And again, it doesn't fit with R1 in any context at all. It's well below our minimum lot size for R1. Doesn't seem to fit MN either, because there is there's little area for pedestrian activity except in our existing park space nearby. So I am not an advocate of shopping around for a zone district in the first place, especially one that doesn't fit. So I'm not in favor of this proposal for those reasons.
Councilor Vincent?
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering, since there seemed to be some question about national historical registration and versus local, if it would be pertinent to explain what the difference is between the national and the local.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the National Register is administered through the Park Service, and it is an honorary nomination and an honorary degree, if you will. Being on the National Register provides no protections from demolition or change. The only way we can get the local control over preservation is through our local landmark ordinance, which does require owner consent. Does that help?
I have another question.
Please.
And there was some indication, I think, from some people that there were private people that were willing to buy this farm, but I don't have any information on that.
I don't think Holly knows.
No, Holly probably doesn't. Can I ask of the person who gave the... No? Okay. Let's leave that. Thank you. So there's no protection. It would only be if the owner consented for a local landmark district. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. The last time you came before us, the question was asked how many feet between the homes. And I saw on one slide that it was 9 and now it would be 6 feet between homes. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect. It's still 9 feet. I think maybe the 6-foot figure came from one of the presentations from a resident. 9 feet is correct.
Could you please tell me what the size of the front yard is and the backyard, if there is a front and backyard?
We program this community more with a common area maintenance program. So a homeowners association would be responsible for the area outside of the home. So we don't really frame the discussion as front yard versus anything else. We just consider it kind of outside of the building. That being said, does the team have a specific number that we can answer with?
Fronts are 5 feet, rear is 10.
I think she was asking the areas. The back of the envelope number that we have is about 150 feet. But again, I want to emphasize that we're not framing this as a traditional suburban product with a front yard that a person would maintain on their own. All of the area outside of the home would be maintained by a homeowners association. So when we have the discussion in that sense, then the open space in the 9.5 acres, just the area accepting the 2.5 acre land dedication, I believe it's 3.49 acres or 35.7% open space. So when we use the methodology from the city of Lakewood, it's about 35.7% open space on that 9.5 acres. We just don't really consider it front yard exactly.
So then the land in front of the home and in back is actually open space?
I won't tell you that the area behind the home where there's an alley is open space, but by the way that the code frames it, it is. Okay. That number altogether is 3.49 acres. The standard is 30%, I believe. Stephen can help us with that. But we're exceeding the minimum standard, and that is without the discussion of the 2.5 acre land dedication. If we consider the 2.5 acre land dedication, I understand that maybe is not what we want to do here, but then the open space is more on the order of 49% of the total area of the Schnell farm.
In your presentation, you mentioned a rooftop terrace. Could you please expand on that?
Yes, when we developed this house product originally, there was some sort of questions about the architectural style and whether there should be a traditional roof line or sort of a flat roof line that's more contemporary in fitting with the kind of spirit, the genesis of being a townhome inspired product. From there, there were ideas about how to kind of program outside space for these homes without increasing the size of the home itself, because we will still want it to be able to place the homes in the community in such a way that we could deliver homes at a certain price. So between these discussions of roof lines and open spaces, one of the ideas came, what if the outdoor space on these homes is not just a front porch stoop? What if it's not just a second floor patio? What if there's more open space that we can provide for a person on the roof? And there's a stairwell option that leads the person to the roof, and they gain several hundred square feet of area for things like patio table, chairs, barbecue, and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you. What materials were the homes being made out of? Brick?
Are you asking about the exterior materials?
Yes.
Typically, we use cementitious siding. We use dry stack stone or brick stone. Those are about the extent of the materials. There's some metal features and things like railing. That sort of summarizes it.
Perhaps I missed it, but was there a school impact study and a traffic impact study?
We actually have a traffic engineer here with us tonight, and he's happy to answer questions for you. There is no school land dedication here because it's a relatively small site, but our expectation and the referral comments that we received from Jeffco School District is that we will pay cash in lieu of land dedication. So we will offset our impact to the school district by paying a set fee that the district will provide for us.
Okay, and with increased asphalt, you have more stormwater impact. Are there any stormwater issues down in that area that you have any concern about, the slope or the terrain or topography of the land?
We have our civil engineer here as well. Tess Hogan with Innovative Land Consultants is prepared to answer questions for stormwater.
And what is the width of the streets that you're talking about?
Maybe, do you want to just step up and...
Good evening, Tess Hogan, ILC 12071 Tejon Street, Westminster, Colorado. The streets are 36-foot flow line to flow line dimension, which allows unrestricted parking on both sides of the street.
Okay, because I know that there's some places close to where White Fence Farm was where the streets are pretty narrow and the access for fire department, everything is pretty tough.
We've met several times with West Metro and we've worked through their details, and they are on board with the layout that we're proposing. The public streets are 36-foot flow line width, parking on both sides, and a 60-foot right of way.
Thank you.
Okay, I think so. That exhausts the questions. This one's been a tough one, and I appreciate your acknowledgement that you felt like you could have handled the communication on the front side better. So I certainly appreciate that. And, land use is the toughest thing that we deal with, and I sense some animosity too from some of the neighbor towards you. And I think one of the groups that's lost in all this is the Schnell family that was there before any of us. And how did they feel when everybody else's houses were built around them, right? Did they feel that those were acceptable, or they appreciated those? And potentially some of these people's houses are built on land that was owned once by them. So it's always something that we have to take into consideration. And, what could happen here, I guess, is 10 or 11 or 12 single family homes, and the structures could still be destroyed by the owner, right? There's no protections that the property owner has or no guarantees going forward. So It's not easy. I had hoped that we would find a better solution, and that's why we asked the community and you to sit back down and try to see. I have really struggled with the historic part of this, and so that is a challenge where I'm coming from. And then flip side is we also know from our communities that this type of product is something that we would like to see more of, that some of our older residents would like to maybe move down or new folks move into. So it's a challenge.
If it pleases the mayor, I believe we have a representative of the Schnell family here. Maybe he could offer some kind of insight if you'll allow him to come up about historic preservation or the Schnell family's point of view.
Well, I think it's important to hear from the folks that have been here since 1888-ish. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you on behalf of the Schnells. You know, they have been here since 1888. They've seen everything build up around them, yet they've been stewards of this land. They've taken care of the land. It was at their own discretion that they became part of this National Historic District. And yes, they could tear down all the buildings and build 11 single-family homes, more than likely. I would submit that the single-family zoning that encumbers this land was done without their consent. Mr. Schnell didn't want to participate in the process. And you can see by all the development around this property, which is much higher density, that the single-family large lot was probably a mistake to begin with. When you see people who live in much higher density housing around there speak so vociferously against this project, it just makes you wonder, is there any project that they would support? And from the Schnell's perspective, probably not. So I guess it kind of blows my mind. I've been in this business for 40 plus years. I've built and developed over 650 properties myself. And and I've been before many city councils and different county boards. And I can tell you that I've never seen a situation where there was high growth designated by a municipality surrounded by higher density and get a project turned down. This is a first in my career, but I've only been doing this 40 years. So.
Hey, excuse me. All right.
I represent the Schnell.
Okay, we'll clear chambers and we'll start over. It's 3 times. We want to work through this. Please.
I represent.
Dialogue is here.
I'm Jim Weichselbaum. I represent the Schnells. I own property in Lakewood. I own a business in Lakewood with 50 people that work for me. And I've been in Lakewood since 1981. That's who I am. So, you know, why these people would want to ruin the Schnell's legacy is beyond me. What they can do, it's their property. They should, whatever happened to personal property rights.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just say that there are still property rights associated with that parcel, so those rights aren't being taken. This is asked for an enhancement. And there's other mitigating things I think that council has concerns about. Mr. Cox, you want to give us a quick tutorial?
Well, yeah, just in keeping with our usual practice before we go any further is just a brief reminder of the criteria to be applied by the city council as you go forward with this application. So to approve a rezoning application, an application for rezoning shall be approved if it is demonstrated that, first, the proposed zoning, or rezoning in this case, promotes the purposes of the zoning ordinance. 2, that the proposed rezoning is compatible with existing surrounding land uses or the land uses envisioned in the comprehensive plan. And 3, the proposed rezoning meets at least one of the following additional criteria. And those are A, the proposed rezoning promotes implementation of the comprehensive plan, or B, there's been a material change in the character of the neighborhood or in the city generally such that the proposed rezoning would be in the public interest and consistent with the change, or C, the property proposed for rezoning was previously zoned in error. So those are the criteria that should be in your mind as you think about the vote on this application.
Yeah, great. All right, I think that exhausts all the questions that I've heard. There's a motion and a second, correct? All right. You good? Yep. All right, please cast your votes. I'm sorry. Councilor Harrison, I owe you the floor.
Yes,
sorry.
thank
sorry.
you. In my previous statement, I did mention that my husband and I own a rental unit at Silver Valley Homeowners Association. This does not affect my vote whatsoever in this. I believe that I can be objective, and I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for stopping me. All right, please cast your votes. Councilor Beta, are you not? I'm going to clear. Please start over. Yep. All right, and that fails 11 nays, 0 yeas. Nays being Paul, Roybal, Gutwein, Skilling, LeBeer, Abel, Vincent, Beta, Johnson, Franks, Harrison. For clarification, Mr. Cox, that was for ordinance 2019-12 and 15.
That would be on the, the motion was made as to the rezoning ordinance. That was the hearing on both matters, but there needs to be a separate vote.
There needs to be a separate vote? Okay. Here we go, 2015.
Okay. I move for approval of ordinance 0-2019-15.
Second.
Vacating the right-of-way for South Hammond Street between West Duquesne Avenue on the north and West Eastman Place on the south.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Please cast your vote. 9 nays, 0 yeas. Nays being Paul, Roybal, Gutwein, Skilling, LeBeer, Abel, Vincent, Beta, Johnson, Franks, Harrison.
He said 9. It was
9. I was hoping it was 9 p.m., so there were 11 nays, 0 yeas. General business. Okay. Council reports. I'll let a couple of my other colleagues talk, but we had a pretty cool day today in Ward 4 where a park, South Sims Park, was renamed after James Harrison, who was renamed after the Outstanding Individual Award, and it was brought forth by the Glennon Heights Community Association. Mr. Harrison was an accomplished man. He served in World War II and Korea, received the Congressional Gold Medal, and he was a Tuskegee Airman. So his family was there today, and it was an incredible ceremony to see and to hear about this wonderful man that helped found Lakewood and was part of many things. And I want to thank Miss Hodson and her staff for the great job that they did to honor the Harrisons and help this go through. We talked a little bit about crime earlier, and I want to touch back because I think you should reach out. Council members did receive something, and one of the aspects also is not just putting bodies on the ground, but we also have certain boulevards that are challenging in our community and that drive a lot of our statistics. So council's made some good inroads with a hotel motel ordinance, and I think we should continue to look at other things that could assist law enforcement that would help in those types of ways. So just wanted to mention that. And then we are off next week. Enjoy that. That's all I have. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Wednesday at 10 a.m. there will be groundbreaking for Iber Village, the site of the former hospice of St. John. I believe it was the second hospice in the nation. The buildings were granted landmark designation last year by our Historic Preservation Commission, and the former hospice will be repurposed for sustainable, affordable housing. And the Hartman Eli Investments LLC is well known for taking these historic properties and repurposing them, but retaining the historic context. So hope everybody shows up for that groundbreaking.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, and it is at 1310 and 1320 Everett Court.
Councilor Roybal.
Thank you, Mayor. To my co-counselor, Mr. Beda, thank you. Thank you for Saturday. We had a fantastic time at Lasley Park. Head count was roughly about 325 people. So great job. Thank you, Mike.
Councilor Gutwein.
Thank you. I appreciate very much the update that we got about crime in Lakewood. This is something that we're hearing more and more about, and I think it's really important that we continue to have this discussion and that we do so with good, solid facts. And I hope that we can continue to have that conversation through the budget process as well, because as we all know, public safety is one of our community's top priorities. So I appreciate all of that. And Ward 5 is going to take a page out of Councilor Roybal and Councilor Beda's book and have a community picnic. Don't know if we'll get 325 on our first attempt, but so we're going to try that for our September meeting, and we will be at Carmody Park on September 7th, so it will be a breakfast. Stay tuned for more details on that. Thank you very much.
Councilor Skilling.
So our Ward 4 meeting, since we won't be here next week, I'll start the announcements now. September 14th, 9:30 a.m. with extended hours for this meeting till 11:30 a.m. So giving you an extra half hour because we are going to have our candidates have a forum. We're going to start with the two for mayor, and we're going to grill them for a little while, and then we're going to have the Ward 4 council candidates. So again, that will be an extended ward meeting. I expect the head count to be 326.
Hold your breath.
Thank you. That's it.
Councilor LeBaire.
Yeah, I want to thank council and staff today for all the hard work, and council just for, I know none of these decisions are easy, and oftentimes they're very challenging. I think we did a lot of good things today, but I do think we missed the mark on a few things. So you will be hearing from me soon about those. One of those I just mentioned real quickly. We are now here in City Hall. We are now in a newly designated blighted area, and also Belmar as well. So I think that was a missed opportunity where we could have had that designation sort of reserved for like Sheridan and some of the other areas in the community. But just want to mention that. So I think we could do a better job of cracking that and having a better sense of what that word means. So you'll be hearing from me on that. I hope you'll all indulge me and engage with me. So thanks for your time.
You, Councilor Vincent. Councilor Beda? No report. Councilor Johnson?
Councilor Skilling, when you're talking about grilling people, I hope that doesn't mean a barbecue. Okay, the candidates. Ward 1 will have our next meeting on September the 7th, 9:30 at St. Paul's, Holy Shepherd Lutheran Church, St. Paul's. And we're going to have 2 police agents, because we've heard so much about crime, to come and address that topic with all of us. Thank you.
Councilor Franks, Councilor Harrison.
I want to add one more comment to our meeting. It's going to be a community discussion about if I were mayor. So the 2 mayoral candidates, if you wanted to come and listen and hear what Ward 5 thinks you ought to be doing, you're certainly welcome to attend. It will be breakfast, as you would. And I want to say one more personal thing, and that is, Margie, I learned a lot from you, and I respect you tremendously, and I want to start the round of ovation and tell you thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll start crying again. Thank you. Thank you very much. I can tell you that I am truly looking forward to Monday nights. I'm excited about that. I will miss Lakewood tremendously, but I'm looking forward to the 2nd chapter. So thank you all very much.
You can come back and spend late Monday nights with us anytime you like, Margie.
I think about 7 o'clock every Monday, I'm going to get up and do a happy dance.
Well, and yes, so.
Put it on YouTube.
And for those that don't know, Margie also served on the Lakewood City Council, so she. Ward 3. And she used to give me Smarties to keep me in line, so thank you so much for everything. You've been incredible. Mr. Cox, Ms. Hodson.
Godspeed, Margie.
Okay, thank you to our police agent for hanging. This is a long night for you, so thank you. And we will adjourn at 10:59 and 46 seconds. Before 11 on your last one.